Pile 2. If you picked the Ahsoka Star Wars ring, then this is you. Let's shuffle, shall we? Alright, Pal 2. That was a very different shuffling process, which tells me a few things. We'll get your oracle cards sorted in a moment once we've covered this, but just know for now that your cards were flying everywhere. It was a very chaotic thing, and rather than sort of having a dialogue with the cards as I go, like I did in the last pile, some of you may notice or may not notice that I wasn't chattering at all when I sped the thing up. So that means that there is potentially a silent treatment going on in this relationship at the moment, or there was for a long time a period of separation. What I also get is that when I was thinking about saying this was when the cards kind of shook themselves everywhere earlier. So if you did see that, that's an indication that when the silence is broken, it's kind of like everything comes pouring out at once, right? There may be, without even looking at these, there may be a kind of lack of filter on the part of either you or your person once there is an opportunity to speak about what's been going on. But I'm going to just sit and meditate on the cards for a moment. I'll make a quick cut in this, but hopefully you won't feel it, and I'll be back in a jiff. Okay, Pal 2. First thing to say is that there are some cards, and indeed some combinations of cards and reversals that appeared in pile 1. Now, between piles, I always, if I'm using the same deck, I kind of put the cards all upright and then shuffle them completely several times before I shuffle on camera. So this is not that the cards are kind of in the same state as they were. This is that if you also felt drawn to pile 1, there may be something in there for you. I appreciate that these are quite long readings, but if you put it on 1.5 speed or something, I think you may find stuff of interest in specifically the sort of areas that are the same, like this star reverse and a couple of other things. So there is also like an overall feeling which is similar in the sense of, I think there was a breaking point with this relationship, or an altercation, or some kind of thing possibly coming from your side, which sowed a bit of mistrust at one point. And as I'm saying that, the music is getting more angsty, right? We've got Glint by Deaf Heaven on in the background, by the way. Yeah, it's just like there was a moment which we'll go into sort of over here, which I think is either to do with you and a past heartbreak of yours, or which caused your person heartbreak, and has sort of brought about in both of you a kind of stagnancy and lack of willingness to move forward with this. Or at least if the will is there, the real motion and impetus is not, which again is a mirror of pile 1 to a certain extent, but just in a slightly different way. So before we go into all of that, let's start with some of the positives. Up here, this row is what it is that you like about them. So this will help you to know if you're in the right place, if none of what I said about this kind of resonates just yet, because we will go into further detail. But I would say that the first thing you appreciate about your person, and even though there's this queen, there can be any gender, any identification, they're very kind of, again, maybe living a bit of a soft life, maybe a bit sort of luxurious with themselves, with their own choices, just financially secure and living with a bit of opulence. If you were in my soft life colour pile for, I think, the red reading, it might be red-orange, but I think it's red, then this is you, right? But it's also kind of what you admire in them. Perhaps if you are a person who treats yourself relatively easily, you want that in a partner. Queen of Pentacles is also somebody who's very in touch with nature. It's a very Venusian, voluptuous, Taurian kind of an energy. This person might be very good with animals, or they might work in the great outdoors or live in a kind of rural setting. But there's certainly, you know, whether they're an urban witch or whether they're out there in the country mucking out every day, there's a sense of connectedness with nature that I think is quite unusual, to the extent that it's one of the things you were looking for. Yeah, it's just a sense of stability, reassurance, material comfort with this person. It's like you could always go to them and they'd have a physical space for you to rest. They'd have something kind of very grounded to say about whatever's going on. And you might even have a spot of wine and some nice bread and cheese or something at the same time, right? I'm getting vibes of you being on a holiday in a vineyard or something. Like, it's very... there's like a middle class energy, and I don't want to say that they are necessarily middle class or even that that's preferable, but it's just that feeling of, if you want to treat yourself around this person, if you want to just have a day sauntering somewhere lovely, or, you know, doing something relatively sort of sensualist together, then that's, you know, that's this person's bag as it is yours. So there's that. And there's the financial stability as well, which I think we'll touch on when it gets further down. There's not a ton of pentacles in this reading, but where they show up, they're quite significant, like here and here. So we'll get to that. But I do think that if this person is kind of, again, mirror of pile one, if they're self-sustaining, quite independent, then this is something you've been looking for. Now, with the Eight of Cups reversed and then the Star reversed, we saw the Star reversed in the last pile, but this is a slightly different interpretation because I feel that these are in conjunction with each other. The Eight of Cups in the upright is about leaving an emotional situation that isn't fulfilling for you. So in the reversal, we're talking about somebody who won't give up on a situation, despite the fact that it might be emotionally fulfilling. And with it linking back to the Queen, I think this is possibly somebody who has withstood a large amount of discomfort in order to get through a situation that they knew would get better. And with the Star in reverse, this refers especially to the healing aspect of the Star, and also again to somebody who doesn't give up on something they've been dreaming about, or on the idea that life can be a little bit more magical than it seems at the moment. Because again, the objective of the reversal is to turn the Star into the upright, which would be a person who is just reveling in the wonder of life, right? There's definitely kind of romantic and nostalgic tendencies coming through with you. There's a big childlike energy with both of you. And I think that, again, you were looking for a person to mirror yourself, and what you got was somebody who maybe isn't as overtly romantic as you are, or who doesn't express it in a verbal way in the same way that you do, but who definitely won't give up on the idea that life can be quite romantic. Life can be quite kind of sparkly and magical and full of amazing twists and turns, right? They've perhaps undergone a great deal of, I want to even say like emotional abuse, or they've just stayed in a situation or stuck by a person that wasn't great in order to get to that idealized version of their life that they see for themselves. And there's an emphasis here that it's not a practical reason that they were staying, even if that was on the surface what it seemed like. It's more like there was an emotional and spiritual root to this. There was the sense that things can be better, and the sense that sticking by those ideals of betterness is a big part of what this person is about. They've got a nice balance of being quite grounded, but also a little bit sort of whimsical. Moving over to the other side, which is what they like about you. Bear in mind we're not mirroring each other yet, so these will be separate qualities, and then we'll get further down and start getting into similar energies of each other. So what they enjoy firstly with this Seven of Swords reversed is that you are trustworthy. I get the sense that this person has been cheated on, lied to, perhaps manipulated if you identify with the abuse narrative over here. Certainly they've had people very, very close to them that have been shady, that have hidden things from them long term, stabbed them in the back, those kinds of things. And they're hyper aware, I want to say hyper vigilant, of encountering anything like that again. There is a sense of anxiety and hypervigilance which comes up later in this side of things. So that's featuring quite strongly, but I think it's very connected to a sense of betrayal, a sense that I'm hearing jealousy, but it's not like on their side. So I think maybe somebody was jealous of them, or somebody sort of misinterpreted a situation and became romantically jealous and then stabbed them in the back or made them jealous. But there's something shifty going on here with that. And as I'm saying that, the light's going green, right? Green eyes, jealousy. And whatever it is, it's like you're almost the opposite to that person or situation. You just came across as very straightforwardly trustworthy, honourable. Perhaps you have a reputation for sticking by people in the same way that they stick with situations. Or perhaps they just got a vibe from you that you can be trusted, that you weren't hiding anything, that you weren't going to cheat, that you're a decent person, basically. So moving across to the Empress in the upright, I mean, wow. This person really thinks that you are, first, physically beautiful, even if your kind of body type isn't necessarily what's in demand in your particular culture. I think that they really enjoy the way that you look physically, and it leaves them feeling very sexually charged, right? There's a big fertility and sex energy with this card. There's also, again, the link to Venus. So this is a kind of goddess quality of any gender. This is just seeming like, again, mirrors of pile one, but seeming like you've come out of some kind of magical beyond and dropped into their life in some way. There's an elevation, that's what I want to say. They've put you on a pedestal in a physical and a sexual sense, perhaps in other senses as well, but what's coming over is the attraction, to be quite honest, and the sense of abundance around you. It's almost like, this card isn't linked to Jupiter, but I want to say there's like a Jupiterian feel. I'm hearing the phrase "just my luck," which is also a really cheesy film where, if you're familiar with that, you'll know exactly what I mean, where kind of everywhere that you go, something good happens for them because they're with you or because they're around you, or at least they perceive it to be that way. If you don't feel like that, and if you don't feel you're lucky, that's fair enough, but just know that when we're over this side of the board, if you like, we're getting their feelings and conceptions about you. And then when we're over here, we're doing you thinking about them, right? On a conscious or a subconscious level. So yeah, with this Empress, they feel that you're very lucky. They feel that you're very abundant. If they're into manifestation, they might consider you to be an exemplary manifester. If you're not into that, or you're not from that paradigm, then this is just somebody who sees that you can achieve what it is that you desire relatively, I don't want to say easily, because you may have worked very hard for it, but it comes to you because you kind of think it and bring it into being in a more straightforward way than perhaps it comes to other people, and with less blockages along the path. That said, moving over to this Ten of Swords in reverse, something else that they really like about you, getting past the physical and past this trustworthiness, is that they see that you've been through a lot and you haven't come out of that being a victim. You're not self-martyring, you're not telling your sob story, you don't go to others for sympathy, you're not kind of misusing the level of, I want to say, shit that you've endured over the years. And it may be that you've been stabbed in the back as well. Obviously, this is very explicitly that kind of imagery. So perhaps part of the reason that they trust you is that they sense that you've gone through a very similar experience to them, and you've come out absolutely determined that you will do right by other people. And they see this, they understand it, they admire it, because let me tell you from experience, knowing people and also as a reader, people don't always respond well when they receive betrayal, right? For some people, it can turn them into a bit of a piece of work. It can make them betray other people, make them act shady, put them into the Seven of Swords upright. And in your case, and in this person's case to a certain extent, what it's done instead is allow you to just transcend your limitations. For some of you, you had physical limitations, I'm hearing, or disabilities, or some kind of long-term illness, and that's what you've elevated out of. Night People by Deaf Heaven might be relevant lyrically. I can't remember the lyrics off the top of my head, but it's leaping out at me and it's on. So if I remember, I'll put a link down below, but if not, please do check that out. But yeah, there's this sense that you've really been through it. Like the Ten of Swords is one of the worst cards you can have for kind of crisis without getting into the major arcana. It's some of the worst shit that can happen to a person. And because there are 10, it's kind of one after the other, right? Again, there's this feeling of burden, which will come up later. But you can carry those burdens, you can get through this stuff. And what's more is you seem to have come through it a better person for the experience, which, as I say, does not apply to everybody who goes through some stuff. I want to stress that you can meet people who go through comparatively minor discomforts and their decision coming out of that is to be a shithead, right? And what this person kind of loves about you is that as well as being insanely attractive, very lucky, very trustworthy, and just kind of bringing in this sense of luxury and abundance for them, you also don't let your circumstances turn you into the kind of person that you don't want to be ever, right? And I see that there's like, in that resilience and resistance to negativity, it's not an echo directly, we're not in the mirrored section yet, but there is a compatibility with your person kind of having this spirit of not giving up, right? There's a similar tenacity between you, but it's been expressed in very different ways and very different circumstances. This may even be something you've talked about if you have spoken at length, right? I sense that you're from quite different lives, maybe even different cultures. Certainly one of you is more well-travelled than the other and less sort of frightened than the other. But despite your differences, you share a common undercurrent of values, and I think this person really enjoys that. So getting into the second row, this is over this side. This is what you like about them that is also mirrored in you, which you may or may not see. The song at the moment is Worthless Animal, so it's possible that you see yourself as a worthless animal, and that what I'm about to tell you regarding your potential partner being echoed in you comes as kind of a surprise, because you're kind of looking to them almost to reflect back at you your better self, or yourself that goes unacknowledged at the moment. But let me tell you that if I'm saying this in terms of how you think about them, for this row, they're thinking it about you too, right? So firstly, we have 2 pages in this section. So what immediately springs out to me is that what you like about them, but what is also true of you, is this kind of childlike sense. Maybe you guys laugh a lot together, you do sort of silly things, or you can be a bit wild when you're out together, a bit impulsive, a bit spontaneous, very kind of innocent and just embracing life as it comes. Again, there's that Jupiterian luck energy that came through for me in the channeling for the Empress, if not the card. With the Page of Pentacles in particular, there's a sense of whimsy. You may have been called kooky or quirky by your friends before, or that may be kind of people's first impression when they meet you. You may dress a little bit, I want to say flouncy, or with a bit of flourish, with a bit of outsiderness to whatever it is that your location and stature is. So, you know, you may be somebody who works in an office job, but you're very bohemian for that environment. Or if you're not in the creative arts, you may be quite an outlandish person in your physical appearance. You may be more extroverted than your environment. Whatever it is, and again, general audience, so I'm reading for a large group of people, and a lot of things could apply in very different ways, let's say. I get the feeling that you present yourself in a way that, again, opens up this person to the idea of whimsy and magic. And again, I'm hearing the word Gilliam-esque. So it's like you're separate from your surroundings, you're outside of things, but in a way that it's not jarring, it's not a strong juxtaposition. It's more just that you bring a little bit of sparkle, a bit of magic to wherever you are, in a way that brings out their inner child. And that's what you like about them. That's the sort of weird part of where we are over here, is that Page of Pentacles, all of this stuff that I'm saying in terms of it being fun, it being light-hearted, it being quite innocent, quite childlike, quite pure, is something that you would be keen to say about your person, not realising that they would also say the same of you. With the Page of Swords reversed as well, it's kind of... the Page of Swords in the upright is quite often spying or sneaky behaviour. And again, it's the sense of trust. You really trust this person just as they trust you. And we know that they would say that about you from the Seven of Swords in reverse. But I think also you would say it about them, perhaps to a lesser extent, and perhaps in a different way. I think that they see you as not being sneaky because you have a very strong value system for yourself, whereas you see them as not being sneaky, perhaps because, in the nicest possible way, they're a bit naive sometimes and a bit incapable of sneak. This person may be a bad liar, or they may just have an energy of somebody who wants to avoid subterfuge altogether out of like a need for kind of personal convenience and for not rubbing anybody else up the wrong way. Again, if you identify with them being in a long-term, not satisfactory situation, shall we say, ranging from this niggles me emotionally onto full-scale abuse, then this may have been a hypervigilance that was taught to them that has meant that they're not keen to get in situations where they have to give more than one response about something, or they're not keen to go behind people's back about anything because they've really felt the effects of people doing that to them. Again, I feel this is true of you because of the row that it's in, but perhaps sort of in a different way, as demonstrated up here and as we talked about. But certainly with two pages coming up, you may both be students actually, or you may have met as students or even as children because there's a nostalgia card coming later. But certainly there's a sense of fun with you guys and you love this about them. It's part of what drew you in. Again, with the opulence and the luxury, there may also be a light-hearted energy. You know, once you finish your cheese and wine, perhaps you're going off and frolicking in the fields and, you know, doing things you shouldn't be doing. And I think that that's, you know, it draws you in, but it also draws them in. And again, you would definitely say they're quirky. You would call them an oddball, an outsider, maybe even call them a bit Jarmushian or, what's that trope? The sort of, sorry, the words are beyond me. It's something to do with like being... that's it. Born Sexy Yesterday, right? If you haven't seen the fantastic YouTube video about the Born Sexy Yesterday trope, I will link it down below. But some of the characters that I associate with this particular trope are Lilu from The Fifth Element, Brendan Fraser's character in Encino Man. These kind of figures who just kind of drop in from like quote unquote another planet and are very attractive, but also quite innocent in the sense that they interact with the everyday world. And I think that this is something you will immediately identify with your person as being, right? They seem to have come from the outside. There's a kind of man who fell to earth energy, any gender. But again, they would say this about you, which is why it's important for you to know. As much as you think that they're this exception to the rule of most people's day-to-day interactions, I think that they would say the same. Finally, with what it is that you see in them that's mirrored back, they defend their territory really well. It may be that they're in a quite demanding job and they have to kind of stick up for themselves in a team, which is what I'm getting, particularly if it's in a creative field because it is wands. But whatever it is, there's an area in which they have a lot of people coming for them or coming at them. Maybe even because they are a little bit weird or a bit of an oddball, or they do things slightly differently. And they're very good at navigating this in a way that isn't overtly aggressive, but also deals with the matter quite promptly, right? This 7, they tend to have the higher ground. Again, if you are a Star Wars fan, the quote that I always give for this Seven of Wands is, I can't think of it now, but the thing that Obi-Wan and Anakin say to each other about, it's over, I have the high ground kind of thing. So that may be relevant as well, but certainly this person, again, like you, they're quite moral, and they will absolutely defend what it is that they consider to be precious, even if in doing so they're not being defensive necessarily, they're just taking care of business. It's something that's very integrated in their daily life. So perhaps it's that they work in, I want to say they work in a field that receives some negative attention, or they're just, like I say, their self-expression might be something that isn't the norm for where they are in a mirror of you. So they're kind of ready for people's comments in either sense. But again, this is something they would say about you. They would sort of, I'm hearing them like chuckling and saying that no one would mess with you. And this is something you're attracted to within them. And I'm not sure that you realise it's also a quality that you have. Right, moving over to the other side of this row. This is kind of what they like about you. That is also a mirror of them, but they don't necessarily realise it. They see you as very worldly. I said earlier about a discrepancy between cultures. I think this person may have had a more sheltered life than you, maybe less well-travelled. Horsehead is the song coming on. I don't know whether that's relevant. Perhaps one of you works with horses, or I get this image of like someone cantering off into the distance in a very confident way, and another person kind of at the fence on a little pony, like, should I? And I feel that that's like your person's identification. They see you, and we'll get into it, but there is like a sense of nervousness about you being worldly, about you having perhaps more life experience, or you being more well-travelled, your friends being more diverse, I'm hearing. There's something where they consider you to have a broader scope of reference. It may even be literally that you are more sexually experienced than them. And that might come as a surprise for some of you. I'm breaking the news on that, right? Because you considered yourself to be on a similar wavelength to them in that sense. But I think I think they consider you to be far more experienced in some kind of area or dynamic. Now, with the Five of Pentacles reversed, this is, it's almost in conjunction with the world, but in kind of a nuanced way. It's like they really enjoy the fact that no matter how much experience you do have, no matter how many places you visited, people you've been with or around, or just how much more confident you are, you never leave them hanging. You never abandon them, is what I want to say. And you certainly don't, what's the word? You don't exclude them from any of your activities on the basis of your differences. That's it. Yeah. Like I say, there is a strong thing of different worlds that you originate from. I don't think it's a problem for this person, but I think that they really respect that you don't make it a problem either, that you just accept them with open arms, right? And then with the third card being this Ten of Wands, they see that you juggle a lot, particularly in I'm hearing dynamism, but in like creative fields, creative pursuits. You may have a lot of projects going on. You may have a high demand or a high output at work. You may also be creative on the side. And I'm hearing like captain of different teams or running different groups or something like that. But you take all of this on in the same way that you take on kind of suffering, and you've gotten through it and it's just made you more resilient, made you kinder, made you better for others. The amount of sort of smaller hurdles that you have to jump over, smaller things that you're having to carry on a regular basis, are just kind of improving you as a person. You don't let it make you aggressive or moody, or you don't sort of lay these burdens down because you can't handle them simultaneously. Instead, you just carry them quite gracefully. And the other thing with this card is that you might not always know where you're going, but they seem to consider that you have a good sense of direction. Whether that's to do with this vibe of luck, I don't know. And for those of you who are well-travelled, it may be that sometimes you're a bit nomadic, you're moving from place to place, you're taking on new stuff without really being able to kind of see where you're going with it. But this energy of luck that they perceive you as having does carry you through. And they really like that. But again, with this being in the mirrored portion of your reading, I don't think that they see that they also juggle a lot in terms of projects, practical concerns. They also don't really abandon the people close to them, although I think in their case it may be a smaller group, a more tight group than your... I feel like you're someone who's very well networked. You might have a lot of acquaintances that you would be prepared to share a great deal with. This person is more the sort to have a close group of friends that they keep. They keep the cards close to their chest with everyone else, right? But either way, the quality that they see in you of, oh, you're not going to abandon me because we're different, is actually a projection as well. Like, it's true, but it's projected. And in the sense that they see you as worldly, that's interesting as a mirror, because I think circumstantially you absolutely are. But there is some way in which this person has more experience than you in one particular field. What's that song that I'm hearing? Whole of the Moon, right? It's an old song. I can't say I'm a fan of it, but I'm getting it as a channeled message. It's sort of about this person who, you know, stays in their room compared to the person who's singing the song, doesn't really see anything, doesn't really meet anyone, and yet they kind of have a spiritual mastery over their circumstances. They get to a point where they understand things just as much as somebody who has travelled well or who has had a larger group of friends or whatever it is. So there is this sense that although they do acknowledge that you're more out there, and it's not a competition in any way, shape or form, I think that they miss that they also have the edge on you with some things, even if they've stayed in one place for most of their lives, or even if you know, they might not have as large a group of friends, or they might not have as much, say, work experience or diversity or whatever it is, right? I think it's a really nice dynamic between you. I'm getting that it's very chilled out, very jovial. When you're chilling, you're really chilling. Like, nobody can sort of harsh your mellow, if you like. Like, so for some of you, you may partake in that sense. You know, I'm getting that kind of a stereotype, but that's not for everyone. And I just want to sort of say, you always have fun together, no matter what your difference is, and no matter as well. Like, from the outside, I think in a sort of couple way, people have seen you or would see you as very laid back, perhaps people with not very much responsibility, people who can indulge out of a certain privilege even. And I don't think that's true at all. I think what hides behind both of those easygoing grins and kind of surfy personalities is that you've both been through a lot, and you've both learned to prioritise fun. Quite frankly, you've learnt that life is short, that awful shit happens, and you might as well have a nice day, right? And that is one of the biggest mirrors between you. It's this similarity of whatever circumstances you both come from, you have a similar philosophy, a similar ethos about how you use your time. And you both reject, again, echoes of pile one, you both reject the quote-unquote normality around you of people who have perhaps traded in some of their enjoyment and pleasure in life, and pleasure is huge with the Empress, by the way. And instead you guys are going, no, I'm not going to sabotage my everyday experiences in order to reach a level of security, or in order to be widely liked by people, or whatever it is, right? You're not willing to give up just having a good time and having a relaxing time as well, because I feel for both of you, a large part of your life has been extremely stressful, and you're willing to put that in the past, right? Okay, moving on to dislikes about each other. We're not yet in the mirrored portion, but we're going to explore what it is that you dislike about them that you don't have as a quality in yourself. Again, we're flashing back to power 1 because we've got a King of Wands here. But firstly, with this Chariot in reverse, right? So you are more widely, more worldly, more experienced, perhaps more well-travelled. And with this Chariot, I feel that you see that they're a bit stuck, if I'm honest. They might have lived in one place for a very long time, even though they don't necessarily like it. And again, you like that they're not going to leave a situation that you know, that they can kind of get benefit out of. But also there's a flip side to that Eight of Cups reversed, which is they're also just never going to leave and never going to move on. And I think as much as you admire their tenacity in sticking through circumstances that aren't great in the past, you wish that they would maybe ditch some stuff that isn't great for them in the present. The song is Skin Game, and one of the channel things that I'm getting is that perhaps you've seen this person in a relationship which didn't serve them from the beginning for a very long time, because they'd have to generate a lot of dynamism and a lot of emotional energy, because the Chariot is a very Cancerian card, in order to leave, and they just couldn't do it, right? For some of you, they literally became trapped in an emotional situation, a skin game, as in they got in because of an initial attraction, a sexual compatibility, and then they kind of didn't want to trouble themselves to leave for longer than benefited them, right? There's sticking through something because you know that it will pay off, or because it's the moral thing to do, and then there's just sticking through something because you haven't got the energy generated to leave it, even though you know it's shit. And I feel like with this Chariot reversed, you see their lack of momentum, their lack of movement forward. If you guys are in separation, because there is, with the world and this and a couple of other things, there are indications of long distance for some of you, and again, general reading. But if you are in separation, there's a frustration from your end of like, will this person ever leave their town? Will they ever be closer to me, or even just accessible to me, sort of in transit? Because it seems like they're not going to move from where they are. It seems like they're just in stuck, stagnant waters, right? It's a water sign that should be a cardinal, but instead it's still. So it's like the lake that's just grown over with algae, where the waters never move, where nothing grows sort of around it and the fish don't swim in it, that kind of energy, right? And you're a bit tired of that. It sounds overly harsh, but I get it. I think that there's an awareness from you that if they want to make this into what it deserves to be, quite frankly, they need to move, either physically or just in the sense of setting their sights on something, right? Having goals, doing something in particular. And then the next thing you're sort of not happy with is, it's tied to that, because sometimes the king is like, he looks like he's almost getting out of his chair, but not quite, right? He's the ruler, but he's also like, oh, should I intervene? There's this energy of hesitation with your person. A sort of, it's not necessarily indecision, but it's along those lines. If they're the head of a team, a household, or a group of friends, they're sort of the ringleader. I get the sense that they don't seem like they're in that position, because they might not be able to take authority with a sort of deft hand. And the flip side of that quality in somebody is also the flip side of the King of Wands, which is that when that person decides that they need authority, having not drawn sufficient boundaries with people necessarily, it can become quite tyrannical. So your person may vacillate between this position of, oh, I don't know, where do you think we should go? What do you think we should do? I want to make sure everybody's all right, so I just won't ever decide on anything. Versus the complete flip of that, which is to say, I'm not getting my way and I haven't been for a very long time, so I'm going to make the rules now and fuck you if you don't agree with me, right? It's the throwing the dummy out of the pram kind of person, in this context anyway, in this position in the reading. So it's like they keep themselves stuck and they stay, open to everybody else's whims rather than knowing their own mind. But then it's like when they do know their own mind, it's such a relief to them on a subconscious level that they go into full dictator mode. And people are really surprised by this and really quite put out by it, because I think that your person overall tends to be fairly gentle. Again, echoes of pile 1, where the person in this position had a bit of a temper, but generally speaking, they were very kind, right? It seems like it takes a lot to get this person to the point where they will just take the wheel. But once they do take the wheel, they can be a stroppy bitch about it. Okay, so coming into the third quality that you don't enjoy, I think that both of these qualities feed into why, but I sense that your person is very anxious. They may have nightmares, they may have a lot of sleepless nights. This is a very niche channel, but for some I'm going to say they are an adult who has had experience with wetting the bed. There seems to be some kind of subconscious, unexplored, like shadow level work terror that they have. And I don't think that they realise how much of their life they're responsible for. I don't think they know that they can take the reins of their own circumstances. And I think in part that's because of this background where they had to stick something out that really wasn't great for them, really didn't treat them well, right? Whether that's the thing they stayed in a little too long, or whether it's a situation further in the past, perhaps a familial thing. Certainly because they've had treachery happen, because they've had not so great circumstances go off around them, not so great relationships. They now have a lot of trauma, quite frankly, that isn't dealt with. And I think possibly they don't want to acknowledge that it's there to deal with it. So it turns up at night, or it turns up whenever it is that they're meant to relax, where they're not seeing people, and they're not working, but they kind of finally sit down with time to themselves. It's like it hits when they're solitary. And that may mean that they cling to relationships that are a bit outmoded, outdated, not appropriate for them. It may mean that they sort of humour people around them who actually aren't the best for their energy or growth. But it's to kind of almost avoid being by themselves and having to think about this. The song at the moment is Between Tides, and it's like they know that the tide has to go out at some point, but they can't take how lonely the beach will feel when it's a bigger space, right? So that they're kind of frantically running towards the ocean all the time. And that brings about a great deal of anxious behaviour. It's a lot of, I want to say with the ones turning up as well, there's a lot of busy work with this person. If they do carry a lot of projects, which we saw, there's almost like, and I must invent a new one to fill the hour, and then I'll do this, and then I'll do this. It's like they're taking on more and more in order to not think about the fact that they are quite lonely and they are quite frustrated, and they do need to maybe move or move on with their lives in some way. And you're seeing this as a person who is possibly nomadic, certainly very dynamic, certainly very at ease in a variety of different places and situations. And your response, quite frankly, is get a grip. Like, you can change all of this. You don't need to be feeling this anxiety. You don't need to be having these avoidant behaviours. If you were to just make small movements in the correct direction for you, regardless of what anybody else thinks, in the way that it's weird because they're able to do this in their presentation to the world, but it's almost like there's other areas where their loyalties are to other people. But your feeling is like, if you can just get over that, it'd be limitless for you, because you are quite wonderful and talented and again, tenacious is coming up again and again. This person may really like Tenacious D, I don't know, but the word tenacity has come up at least 5 times, so here we are. And there may be something with that as well, that they label their behaviour of staying in the same place, or sticking by the same people, or doing the same kind of old shit as being tenacity, when sometimes it's verging on just stagnancy, right? It's, yes, they stick through things really well, but also they use that as an excuse not to move, not to grow, not to acknowledge how traumatized they are by their past. There's a sense coming up, and this is just a channeled, but I think they are addressing that. I think they might be maybe reading about it, maybe audiobooks or like journaling or something to do with books in some way. They're starting to come to grips with whatever this is, but I think it's not fast enough progress for you, especially bearing in mind that in terms of your outward life, your external circumstances, you are streets ahead of where they are. And it's quite frustrating because you want them as a partner, but you also want them to hurry up, right? If you identify with this as being twin flame specifically rather than soulmate, you want them to do the work. You want them to grow so that you can match up vibrationally and meet up, right? Or reunite. If you are in touch, you just want union. And you feel like the reason it's not happening is that this person is staying where they are, doing the same things with the same people. So moving over to non-mirrored things that they aren't so fond of in you, we have the Six of Cups, the Four of Cups, and the Three of Swords. This is an interesting combo that tells quite a story, right? I did mention at the beginning that there might be some kind of past circumstance where you've maybe offended this person, broken their heart, or where you've had your heart broken and you're not over it. They are definitely picking up on this in a big way. The Six of Cups is nostalgia. So they see that there's something you're not letting go of. It could be a childhood thing, it could be a previous connection, but there's something you're romanticising, and I want to use that word specifically because it's echoed in the Four of Cups. Four of Cups can be about idealising a situation that actually wasn't that ideal and making it seem like it's okay that you're not moving forward, which again, it's like, it's not a mirror because we're not in the mirrored bit, but you can see how there's similar themes between what you dislike that they're doing and what they dislike that you're doing. There's a sense that this person may have made you an offer already and you declined because of something to do with your past or because a kind of nostalgia for a feeling that you once had that you think you can recreate better, or you thought at the time you could recreate better without this person. There's also an inclination towards family with the Six, so it may have been that if you were making a choice between them and another person and there was the choice of being around children or having children, you may have said no to them based on that, but actually that wasn't the correct decision either, and you've kind of learnt this as you've gone on. With the Three of Swords, this could be that your heart was broken in that situation, or it could be that you kind of really broke their heart by not taking the offer that was given. If you don't identify with having made them an offer yet, because this situation is early days or because it's a little bit more complicated than that, then this is them seeing in you that you don't always take what life presents to you, right? There's the vibe of luck that we've talked about in several different placements, but there's also the sense of there's something that they wanted you to go after or they wanted you to take and you didn't. And it's tied very heavily into a past association. The song that's just come on is For the Guilty, which has personal links with me to a relationship that I wish I'd not been in and I'd pursued my twin flame instead kind of thing. But it also links to feelings of guilt from a past connection. So for those of you who are identifying with the narrative of a previous relationship, it may be that you felt too guilty to take this person up on their offer. Perhaps it was quite soon afterwards. Perhaps it was that there were just things left kind of left to untangle, right? Emotionally, mentally, in those kinds of areas, because we've got cups and swords, and you just didn't feel that it was the right time or the right offer for the moment. But whatever it is, they're annoyed with you. They're frustrated that you're doing what they see as living in the past. Again, with the echoes, this could be to do with you indulging connections, particularly exes, that are not so great for your energy, but that you wanted to stay friends with. staying in a situation for too long, which again it reflects them, but it's in a different way. I don't think that you staying here is as big or as influential on different aspects of life as this stuck chariot at the other end. I think this is more like emotionally not letting go of something, whereas this is just physically not moving, physically vacillating between things and letting everyone else make your choices, right? It's a very different vibe, and it's much more major, severe over here. But there's certainly a sense of like, get over the past coming from this person in relation to you. And again, it's not the thing that's echoed. So this is quite a specific situation to you. Whether it's just in their perception, as I say, because it's over this side of the board, that's fine. And if you're thinking that what I'm saying is dog shit, be mad at your person, not at the messenger. But yeah, there's heartbreak involved. There's nostalgia and romanticization involved. For some of you, I'm hearing you even make media or artwork around a situation that is very much in the past. And this breaks the heart of your person because they don't feel it's about them. That could be a reading for this song actually as well, because I think I once posted this in a place where it was misunderstood as being about something or somebody else, if that makes sense. But yeah, there's like my personal associations with this also are about a need for apology or about the word sorry in various languages. And yeah, there might be something to do with that. There might be a need or even a request from this person that you apologise to them for what happened in the past within this connection. So moving forward, we're going to go into the mirrored section of what it is that you're not satisfied about with each other. I'm not sure why the music's just gone silent. There we go. There's been a pause. I don't know whether you guys caught that. I don't know how loud it is for you, but yeah, before I went to this thing and I was talking about what you're both frustrated about in the present, this could be literally a no contact situation, certainly a pause in contact, certainly a pause in events, because the music just went dead silent with no explanation and then started up again with the spark as a song, right? So if you are in no contact, there's a promise that pretty soon what will happen first is a sexual spark, a bit of a flirtatious reconnecting that maybe brings about the kind of conversations that it seems you're overdue having, but that comes from a sparkier, more light-hearted place at first, right? It's showing me these pages. It's saying that when you do get back in touch, if you haven't yet, it's going to be quite fun. It's going to be quite light, quite bouncy. I don't know when you're seeing this, but if you're not seeing it live, Spark reminds me of Sparklers as well, which reminds me of November because we have Guy Fawkes Night in the UK and we set off fireworks. Or it could be a New Year thing as well. But there's some kind of thing with fireworks, spark and reunion, right? Not union necessarily, but reunion, dialogue. And I think that you will need dialogue before you get to the point of union for reasons that we'll now explore. So, what you dislike about them that's actually a mirror. With the lovers reversed, you don't feel they're making a choice, right? Again, big echo of this chariot. They're not making life choices, but also they're not choosing specifically between two different things. For some of you, this can be that they're not choosing between you and another person. If that resonates, take it. If it doesn't, just know that I'm reading for a large group. There's also like a sense of like, because it is a mirrored thing, perhaps with this situation, you couldn't choose or you went off with someone different and now they're putting you in the position where they won't choose. And I say won't rather than can't, right? Which is interesting. But you're really frustrated by that. You're just like, fucking make your decision, come towards me. I'm tired of this. And it's a major issue for you because it's major arcana. It's a big card. It's a big deal that they won't either make life choices and move forward or just fucking choose you, right? And with choose you, I'm getting another interpretation, which is that this may be someone who's quite popular with whatever sex or gender they're interested in, right? They may have a lot of choice around them. And there may be a feeling from your end that they've never selected you as a top priority, that perhaps you've been breadcrumbed or you've been just kind of you know, kept in conversation, kept in contact, but that then this person has felt that they have the right to entertain other connections, and that's been quite upsetting for you. So take that if it resonates, because that would sort of mirror this, and it would make sense in it being a mirrored portion, right? Then we have the Ten of Pentacles in the upright. It's a weird one for something you don't like about somebody, because it tends to be about stability, financial success, legacy. It's not a career card, so it's not that they're like necessarily putting their work before you, although that could be a thing with the lovers, that like, if you're not top priority, there could be a non-physical third party and a non-person third party, right? And that may play into it. But more than that, what I'm feeling with this is that they're very, very future focused. They're thinking extremely long term, and that doesn't leave much room for moving around when they consider what may happen with you. The song Lorelei is about to come up. There may be some kind of either mermaidy energy, the song Lorelei, which I think is like an ancient Eagle-Eyed Cherry song, or something to do with, what's that series? Gilmore Girls kind of stuff going on, right? I don't know whether that's a reference for you guys or just for you, but it's coming up and it's jumping out at me, so I'm saying it, right? Anyway, this person thinks extremely long term. They are not able to be spontaneous enough to pursue this with you right now. And that really gets to you, I think. Particularly because we've got this setup of like, there's a couple in the background, they have a nice pair of dogs, there's a sort of grandfather figure, the city looks nice. You know, it may be that you have this very complete picture of where this could be going, and the fact that you'd be a couple and you'd have pets and you'd live somewhere that appeals to both of you and grow old together. But it's like this person's long-term view, it's not that it's not in alignment with yours, it's that it's so long-term that they haven't thought to fit you in it in a way. I get the feeling that they planned something for their future before they met you, or before they realised that you were a kind of good relationship energy for them, a bit of a counterpart vibe. And so they didn't necessarily fit you into that very complex picture. And they're going through the steps that they need to do to get to whatever it is that they're after, albeit slowly and in quite a stuck way. But there's no room then to say, oh, and also, I want to do it with this person because I think they're my soulmate. Or for some of you, not all of you, but some, also I want to do this with my twin flame, with the love of my life, right? I should fit them in. It's like with these two together, there's no room for you. That's what's getting you the most. But the interesting thing is that with this being in the mirrored section, you know what I'm going to say? There's a way that you're not making room for them. It could be as simple as a vibrational lack of room. It could be that you're not in the mode of acting as if you're with them already. You're not making room for the existence of a partner in your life to the extent that you want to partner up with them. Or it could be as massive as you're already tied to something very long term. You're already making moves and there's no room for them. So you're like projecting that, well, you never make room for me, so fuck you. You know, it's weird for it to come up in the mirrored portion, because it seems from your end to be such a specific situation and such a reasonable problem, and something that, you know, I would also be upset by. But then what the universe is communicating in its placement in this reading is that you're doing that too. So I'm here to break it to you. Sorry. I get the feeling you're not enjoying this reading altogether because of some of the stuff I'm telling you. But trust me when I say that if you're here and you're still watching, it's because this is something that's meant to be communicated to you at this time so that you can heal it, right? Which is also a message of the star reversed, by the way. Okay, so the Hanged Man in reversed. Again, this is stuckness. This is like, are we ready yet? Are we there yet? Right? The Hanged Man in the upright would be the same kind of, nah, I'm just going to chill here, that the Chariot is stuck in, but in a kind of different, more spiritual way. But with it being in reverse, it's like the energy is ready now. Your person, I want to say your person is baked, right? So again, with the stoner references we had earlier. But what I mean is that this relationship, in whatever capacity it is, has been in the oven for a long time. You've put a lot of preparation into it. It's also had some time to just do its own thing by itself under the heat of the sun. And now your feeling is that it is ready. You can smell the food. You want to take it out and put it on the plates, right? You've done the preparation component of all of this. You want to get to good eats. And there is a sense with it being in reverse that you are ready. That is true. You're picking up on the correct information there. But again, from their end, they're looking at you and saying, are we ready yet? Right? For different reasons, as previously covered. But they're saying, look, I'm hanging around. I'm waiting for you. What the fuck is the hold up? And it's like you're thinking the same thing about them. So I want to acknowledge that you feel that and that it's legit, and that I would be also quite frustrated, especially if I felt that it was like the right timing was happening now, that it was the correct time. But what I want to make you aware of is that they think that the ball's in your court. They think that it should be happening now too. So it's kind of, well, I'm drawing a blank here as to like, whose responsibility is this, right? Who needs to make this move? Perhaps if there is a period of silence, there's a sense of like, whose job is it to talk first? And I think that that's perhaps the wrong approach, right? What weirds me out about this whole thing, dude, is that you are both very self-reliant, self-propelled, tenacious people. You're both people who can outlast tricky circumstances in a dignified fashion. And yet what we have here is, what's that quote? There's something like, I'm afraid what we have here is a failure to communicate. It's that Cool Hand Luke quote, right? There's a failure to just step forward from two people who are normally very competent with their own lives. Yes, this person is stuck, but generally speaking, they're doing all right, right? They're a good person, and yet neither of you will fucking speak. Why is that? It's almost like you're so keen, because of this past relationship stuff at both ends, each of you is blaming the other so much that you're so fixated on what the other has done to you that neither of you will speak. And again, there's parallels to Power 1, with whom I thought there might also be a bit of a pause or a no contact at a different stage. So that might be useful to you, but it's, no pressure, because I know it's a big time investment. The thing to take away from this bit is, yes, they haven't put you in their plans, but have you really put them in yours? Yes, they haven't really chosen you, but are you choosing them vibrationally? Are you acting like they're already in your life? Are you approaching other people as if you are partnered? Are you approaching your day-to-day routine as if you have somebody else to sort of be around, etc.? And then the big one is, they think they're ready. They think you're not ready. You think you're ready. You think they're not ready. So who's going to speak first? Because both of you usually take responsibility for your own selves, your own circumstances. It's part of what you love about each other, right? The Queen of Pentacles and the Empress, they're on slightly different levels, but they'd be best buds. They're really sort of synonymous. So why is it that you guys are both very capable, and yet here we are, There's a bit of a standoff situation, a bit of a checkmate kind of a thing. So, going into what they dislike about you, that is also a mirror of them. They see your boundaries with the Queen of Swords, and they think they're a bit much. I think that they respect where they came from, particularly because, as we said, this person can defend themselves very well, and they understand the need for defence in a sort of lighter way in daily life. They get why boundaries are a thing. By the way, if you want a reading on boundaries, one of my other Try Before You buys will be the boundary setter for the basic tier, so do subscribe if you're interested. But they see that you have some kind of guard up, some kind of defence, some kind of line in the sand or categorisation between this is okay, this is not. And I think that that's probably quite healthy, but this person doesn't think it is. Maybe that's because your boundary is specifically with them. Perhaps you're somebody who's got quite... Because your standards for yourself are very high, You may be one of those people who has equally high standards for others, and at the moment this person feels that they're not measuring up, which may be part of the source of their anxiety. So they project, rather than deal with their anxiety and deal with the fact that they feel inferior, they may be projecting that your boundaries are excessive, that you are too boundaried, that you are too straight to the point with people, that you close people off a little bit much, that you keep too many secrets even. All of these things are kind of Queen of Swords energy. But again, you know what I'm going to say by now. They're seeing it in you, but you're also seeing it in them. I think you think that they haven't come forward and that that's too boundaried, right? You're ready, they're ready, and you think that it's their fault and they think it's your fault. So again, these two kind of echo each other. With the Judgment in reverse, there's some kind of call, whether it's vocational, spiritual, or just the telepathic bond, the call to this relationship, that they think that you're not answering. They think that the phone is ringing and you're putting your fingers in your ears. There may even be a literal missed call thing from this person where they've texted you and you've ghosted, or they've tried to call you and you haven't been able to pick up. I think they think that's an excuse. I don't think they think it's legit. They're a bit heartbroken by it, again, because we're over this end. But either way, whether that's true or not in terms of contact, there is something about your life, your purpose, your relationship to them that they think you are not answering. For some, I'm hearing you were given a job opportunity and you didn't go after it, and this person is projecting their stagnancy and saying, well, how do you expect to get anywhere if you don't pursue this or accept this thing? Partly because, as we observed earlier, they are a bit stuck, right? So they see you as being stuck, see you as not answering the call because they won't move. So we know already how they mirror that back, right? We know that they think that you're not answering the call, but actually it's because, as we've established in many different placements, they're not really moving forward with their lives at the moment, or at least not outside of a very specific plan that they've set for themselves, and a very specific paradigm which conveniently ignores both their trauma and the stuff that they've stayed in for too long. Now, if we're ending on the Knight of Swords with this, it's almost like the sort of opposite of these two in a way. Like, I know it's swords still, but it's like they're seeing that you're not moving forward, they're seeing that you're not answering the call, they're seeing that you're too boundaried, but also they're calling you impulsive, impetuous. They're saying that your words kind of spill out everywhere. If you weren't here for the shuffle section, just know that during the shuffle, the cards threw themselves across the table after a kind of long silence of no dialogue with the cards, no movement. So I do sense that when you get back in touch, you may, you know, that spilling out of words that I was talking about there, this kind of silence, blurting out everything, they see it as coming from you. But again, because this is in the mirrored section, you might see them as being a bit verbally impulsive, perhaps even a bit cutting, because we've got these in combination. The Queen of Swords along with the Knight in combination in a person can be someone who's very they can be meticulous with their words in categorizations to the point that they don't realize it verges on insult with other people. There's a particular I want to say like a Mercury and Aries quality with it, where they might speak about something in what they consider to be an innocent way, and indeed with innocent intentions, but actually what they're saying can be truly hurtful. So they're thinking about that with you, but you're seeing it in them, right? So again, we're at a stalemate with this. It's not like the bit we're getting in the last row that I find interesting is in the last reading, this row was sort of about different traumas and you reflecting each other in that. We've got that up here. What we're seeing in this last bit is more a sense of accusation. They think it's your fault, you think it's their fault, and so here we are, right? And that may not be actively antagonistic, it may not be aggressive, you might not talk shit about each other. I certainly don't see any cards that indicate that this person would badmouth you or vice versa. But I think that you're in a place of your treatment with each other where it's almost like, of course, this communication comes back in with a sexual spark, because if you had to sit down and talk to each other, you'd probably rip each other's throats out a little bit with your words, right? You'd probably be too cutting with these swords. And I think that's something you're being alerted to so that you can work on it from your end. Because, spoiler alert, particularly with Twin Flames, if you work on your stuff, the person has the circumstantial opportunity at their side to move towards the same kind of growth, right? Say you go for therapy and this person needs therapy, usually with twin flame or soulmate dynamics, they kind of get invited to therapy in some way around the same time so that they can go through the same process of leveling up and get to the place where you're both ready around the same period. This is what we mean by right timing in the positive, right? It's always a frustrating phrase to hear, particularly when you think it's upon you and yet it's not happening for you. But with right timing, it's like a sense of the universe reshuffling you both through synchronistic events so that when one of you is doing the work and working on your shadow and self-improving and realising where you might have, possibly improved on your communication, etc., the other one will be pushed by their circumstances into thinking over the same things. They might have a completely different life experience, and that's even more true of this particular reading, but whatever it is will get them to the same energy so that you're ready to come together. And as I'm saying that, we transfer to a different artist, a different album. We're now in Space Echo, right? You may be sci-fi fans for some of you. Like, I know the Star Wars ring is a thing, but beyond that, in terms of, other space opera or even hard sci-fi universes, just with the word Space Echo, that's what it's giving me. I think the thing to sort of finish on from the tarot portion is, don't let this end on anger, because what I'm getting overall from this portion is a very different vibe to this. We started out chilling out, we started out very relaxed. You may even have a reputation when you're together with your friends, etc., that like you guys are equally funny, equally chilled out, kind of made for each other in that sense, maybe even a bit too laid back compared to everyone else. And yet what we're seeing down here is this like unchecked, I want to say resentment. It's like you wouldn't be able to help making passive aggressive remarks at each other if you did properly talk it out. But that's not the vibe of your connection overall. That's not the mood that you will end up in together, nor is it truly reflective of what your situation merits. Because I do feel that whatever these past relationships and experiences, they were here to bring you together, not drive you apart. They were here to help you both respectively learn what it is that you needed to learn to be in a connection like this. So I think you need to examine your theory of what love is, how unconditional it is. Again, check the intro for my Your Future Spouse, What You Fucking Hate About Them reading for more on that. But there's a sense of really examining like, okay, I care about this person. How do I get that across first? And I may be wounded. I may want to ask a load of questions. I may want to see whether bad things will happen with us and whether I can trust them properly. And I think you probably can. But first, you need to come in with the energy of love. I'm thinking of, is it 1 Corinthians as well? For those of you who are biblically inclined, the whole love is patient, love is kind speech deserves a reread, right? You may tell other people that you're in love or that you have feelings, but my sense is that if you got face to face with them, say you were like in passing, you met them in a shop or you were on the same train or whatever it may be, I think it would be a very difficult interaction in the mode that you're in at the moment. I think there's some stuff that needs, if not forgiving, then certainly processing at both ends. So with that in mind, let me just move some things out of the way. We're going to pick an archetype card for each of you and one that's an energy that you have in common at the moment, just to get more of an idea. As I said in the intro, the basic tier is basically what you're seeing here, but more specific to your circumstances. Oh, we've got a card picking itself out already. Excuse me. But in the expanded tier, As well as getting this information, there would be more oracle cards and a direct message deck communication as well. So, that's interesting. And can we have one for both, please? There we go. Come on. Right, I'm just going to cut the deck because you're not playing ball. That's interesting as well. And let's get you a Black Moon astrology before we go into these as well, just for, again, overall clarification, guidance. I feel like it's this top one, and I'm going to take it upright. Again, what did I say about meeting up again and it's starting with a spark? And then you've got the desire card, the fire element, right? Fire is also propulsion. So I want to say that that's this movement that you wanted in the upright. It's starting to happen. But what there needs to be first is a spark of desire. I'm not saying that you'll meet up again and fuck. You don't have to. It's up to you what you do. But what I am saying is that the next communication might be a more flirtatious one, might be more to do with physical desire than with making up as friends and as people, and that the other stuff will kind of follow along. And I don't always, I don't always say that to people because I feel like it's very easy to be taken advantage of romantically if you go in with sex and expect that emotion will follow. That's not what this is. I feel like this is a long-standing connection, and that therefore if you go in from perhaps a sexual angle, it's not going to put either one of you at a disadvantage from a political perspective, put it that way, right? I think you know what I mean by that, but anyway. So, you're in the Samaritan, in the light aspect, well done you. So this says, refine your capacity to help those you would prefer to ignore. I don't think you'd prefer to ignore this person, but I do think that you'd prefer to ignore your less positive feelings towards them. And that's why much of this reading has had to focus on the bottom portion of what you dislike about each other, because I think it's coming up for healing for you. And the Samaritan energy as well links back to that 1 Corinthians thing that I was saying of, okay, if you love this person, love in inverted commas, right, because we're exploring the word, what can you do to be kindest to them? What would you do if you met them again as a stranger and had all of the impact of their positive qualities on you again, but none of the impact of what it is that you've been through in relationship to each other? How would you behave to them in order to get across to them how grateful you are that they're in the universe and how much you care for them, right? And that's the Samaritan thing. It's this energy of giving. I think you are, because it's in the light, not the shadow, you're more than capable of this. I think you just needed me to say, this is the energy to step into for you to keep reminding yourself, if you like. Because it is going to be a difficult chat when you get to it. But I think, I'm hearing the Cinderella thing, have courage and be kind. So that may spark for some of you. And I'm also getting... I love this movie, why can I not think of the title? Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, where Wayman says something about it's even more important to be kind because they don't know what's going on, right? And I fucking love his character. I think the movie kind of secretly revolves around him, but that's a tangent for another time. May resonate with some of you. May be a good person to bear in mind while you're interacting with your person, right? So, for their side, we've got slave in the shadow attribute. This is not a political statement. This is nothing to do with race, anything like that. It's just that the slave is a mythological archetype. So let's explore the shadow. Giving your willpower to an external authority out of fear of making your own choices. Could we be more on point, right? We've already spoken about the fact that this person sees you as being more worldly, that they're stagnated in their own decisions, that they hand their decisions to other people with the King of Wands and then get tyrannical when they realise that that isn't working for them, and that this is what gives them their nightly anxiety. So I think this is just reiterating what we've already said, confirmation, etc. But it's also to say that they're still in that energy. So when you come towards them as the Samaritan, as a spirit of kindness and love, you need to be patient, I guess. You need to understand that they haven't resolved all of their issues yet, but you love them enough to kind of stick with them while they tie off the final few loose ends, right? Now, the common energy that you share is the Avenger in the shadow, which is resorting to violence in the name of a cause. I don't think you guys come across as the violent types. I don't think this is to do with physical abuse in the slightest. I think this speaks to the fact that you're both on the defensive. You're both coming into this like end energy with the sense of needing to avenge yourselves for what happened with the other person. And again, it's the reiteration of, let's go in with kindness, let's go in with unconditional love, a Samaritan energy. And this will be sparked off more with the desire of the communication. And this album is very, it's very sultry, a little bit lusty, right? It's a sad album, but it's also quite sexy. It's got that trip hop vibe to it. So I feel like part of the musical choice as well, because you could have had any one of maybe 4 albums I put on this list. It's to do with that like feeling, it's your advice really, as well as getting into this, is to feel a bit more sultry, a bit more sexy. Get yourself into the idea that this person sees you as the Empress energy. I'm hearing for some of you, you dance, get back into dancing, particularly more sensual stuff like belly dancing, or perhaps like if you're into things like burlesque, this might be a good time for that. But it's kind of getting back into your own body, and more importantly, the sense that your own body is what will draw this person back in, so that eventually you can heal old wounds. And you can drop your nostalgia, they can drop their stagnancy, and you can move forward without the resentment that we've spoke about into something that is worthy of these top 2 rows of cards, where you respect each other as humans. You could have a great deal of abundance and fun together, and you could travel the world, stay in beautiful childlike energy, and inspire the people around you as a couple. If that was useful to you, please like, subscribe, ding the dong, thank you kindly. Please recommend me to anybody else that you know who would like a love reading or any other type of reading. If you're interested in like ongoing series where the readings are a bit more random, I've got an A to Z with the Marseille that's doing 5 card readings based on a lucky dip. And I'm also doing a spectrum reading where we pick 3 themes on a colour every week, and we're going kind of round the rainbow or round the colour wheel to see what comes up essentially. So that might be for you if you want something but you kind of don't know what you want. And again, you can book with me using the link down below if you'd like a more personalised version of any of this, or you just want to see what's in my shop. There is also a donation button, and I'd appreciate any contributions, even if it's just £1, because this is my sole income, and I'm living in the UK in a cost of living crisis. But none of that is an obligation. I just really hope you enjoyed your time here. If it was helpful and if things did resonate for you, let me know in the comments what clicked, what didn't, etc. And hopefully I will see you again soon. Pile 3, hello. If you chose this, the Jean Amethyst ring, then you're in the right spot. Let's shuffle. All right, pile 3. I will say that you've got a few cards in common with the last pile, but it's a very different vibe. So take that as you will. I'm just going to meditate on these, and hopefully you won't feel the cut, but I'll be back in a jiff. Okay, pile 3, I'm back. I think we're going to end on a bit of a high note with the ending of this one, because the bad news in this reading is not so bad. I think with the first 2 piles there's a real mixed bag. And with you, yeah, we're going to tap into some stuff that you guys think about each other that isn't so great, because that's part of this format, but I don't think that it's going to be quite as difficult as previous piles. So if you were drawn to a couple of them and you're landing here as well, I would say that this energy is probably the one that prevails, actually. I think this is the stronger and more positive, although it is complex, and there are a few minor warnings, I would say. Getting into the minor warnings part, right? And a reminder before I begin that you can book the extended version of this reading with me as a private reading if you would like communication from your person to be expressed in little messages, as in what they're really thinking, not how they communicate with you now. I felt with the other 2 piles that there was a degree of separation. I think with this one you might be in touch. I'm not sure you're in full communication in terms of being right there close to union yet, if you are identifying as twin flames anyway. I think you're probably good friends. I think if you're not fucking, you will be. But I also think there's like a bit of an unhealthy energy, and I know some of you, if you are tarot affiliated, will have spotted things like the Devil, the Ten of Wands, the Queen of Wands, sorry, the Ten of Swords even. And yeah, there's some stuff to cover there, so let's dive in, shall we? We're beginning with what you like about them. What I want to say before we get into any of the cards individually is you have my weaknesses. This person is delectable, but they're also a touch Machiavellian, and I think you enjoy it. I think they're very capable of manipulating others. I think they're extremely articulate, showing that I'm not. And I was going to say, and also well educated, which is what's sort of blurred in that phrase. I even get the thing that because I was sort of stumbling over my words there, and that's not usual for me, perhaps they're so articulate and so eloquent as well that you feel a little bit clumsy around them, or you say things that come out a bit wrong, or I just get the feeling that they're very refined. I've got a Tom Hiddleston doing Loki energy of any gender. Just somebody who could trick you and backstab you at any moment, but who is so charming that you will have them around anyway. And again, very, very different vibe to the 2 previous piles, who had partners that were potentially very reliable, but that they were in high conflict with. In some ways, I sense it's the opposite with you guys. They're not so reliable. They're a bit of a trickster figure, actually, but you're not in conflict with them because you know them pretty well and they know you. And what's more important, they know that you know them, right? So they know that you'll call their bluff. They know that if they're going to try anything with you, you'll be ahead of their next steps. They can be smart. They can be a bit smarmy. They can say things that are a little bit on the line of too cheeky occasionally. But I think you will forgive them, and more importantly to them, you will understand them, right? So what you like about them, again, big Machiavellian energy with this first card, but it's also about the sense of like, whether or not their team lost, they appear to always be winning. This is different from the luck child vibes of the previous pile. This is more kind of a, we're not altogether sure whether this is by nefarious means or not. I want to say for some of you this is a new connection, and that might be why you kind of can't get your head around this person. But then for many others it's not new, it's just that this person is quite complex, and you know, months, years, maybe even decades into a connection, you're still figuring out really who they are, because they're a very good mask wearer, and kind of how it is that they manage to do what they do with such agility. There really is a very mercurial, again with sort of Loki in his parallels to things like Hermes. There's this sense of being one step ahead and descending like a god upon the earth. Also, I sort of, again, fumbled my words, but I made the accidental word ween, so they might be a Ween fan. I'm hearing Ocean Man now that I've said that. But yeah, the song at the moment is To Hear Knows When, and I'm just thinking, yeah, you can't picture this person's next steps at all, or the vast majority of people can't, should I say. I think you've got a decent handle on them, and that might be part of what they like about you. We'll get to that in a bit, but certainly other people cannot be 2 steps ahead of this person very easily, and they may even enjoy sort of noirish fiction or detective stories or things where people con or trick each other, or even sort of stuff about things like hacking and not so legal activism, because I think it speaks to a part of them that is a bit scorpionic, a bit sneaky, a bit clever, right? And far from being a quality that you dislike, this is something you're drawn to. Whether consciously or not, you want to be surprised, outwitted. You appreciate the spontaneity of having somebody around who you can never fully predict. Whether or not that's a good thing is for you to decide over the course of this reading. Because for those of you for whom this is a new person, I'm not going to lie to you, there are a few red flags. I wouldn't be trusting them, but I also wouldn't begrudge them my time or energy, because I do think, as we said before, they are quite charming. With the Fool card, as I said before, there is an emphasis on disguises, on mask wearing, both physical and metaphorical. This person may be somebody who does fancy dress quite a bit, or if not, they're able to blend in a chameleonic fashion in a variety of social circles. They may be a bit of a social climber in terms of other people's classist beliefs. They may flit in and out easily of both where they were from and where they see themselves going to, if that makes sense. I don't get that they're deeply aspirational, really, but it's more that they can blend with high art and low art. They can blend with people who consider themselves refined and are perhaps a bit snobbish, and people who are very down to earth by contrast. But the trouble with this person is that there are separate disguises for these situations, and that they have to be very careful not to get caught out, right? If they're behaving a certain way for one person, they won't for the other. And I sense that to whatever extent you do know and sort of enter into a relationship with this person, you've sort of seen them play both parts, right? They may even literally be an actor for some of you. But yeah, there's this agility of moving between environments, risk-taking as a kind of force of habit, not even something they really consider. It's just that their paradigm is that life is full of risks. So they will do something incredibly spontaneous on a date or a hangout or whatever that might shock people, but it's not for shock value, it's not alien to them, it's not something they're putting on like the masks, it's the way that they think and feel about situations. For some of you, they may also be a magician. You may be magically inclined or interested, and that's why you're here. You know, you're clearly into spirituality to some extent, or at least curious. And I think in those cases, this person could be practicing. I don't think they've worked any high or low stuff on you. I just think that is, their agility speaks to me in that kind of a way. They make me think simultaneously of John Constantine in his original Hellblazer form, but also of Wyndham Earle from Twin Peaks and the sort of millions of terrible disguises that still manage to fool everybody. And obviously both of those are practicing magician figures, but they're also both trickster figures for the rest of the players, if you like, the cast, the characters. They help to bust open the paradigms of everyone around them in a sort of oblivious way, just by being themselves. And again, with the Fool energy, this is very sort of childlike. It's, in a way, innocent, which you might think contrasts with Machiavellian personalities, but it seems to me like they're very knowing in the sense that they understand how to behave around others, what to say, what not to say, perhaps how to mislead to a certain extent. But in terms of their adaptability and their spontaneity, it does come from an innocent place. It's just the way they are. It's not something they've calculated to be the best position to be in. And I think you do see that in them, and I think you respect it. There's a sexual intrigue with this person, definitely, but there's also a healthy fear and respect. It's a very intriguing connection from your end. Looking at the Five of Cups reversed, this is also somebody who makes the best of any kind of situation, focuses on the positives no matter how bad their negatives are, which may resonate with other piles if, like I say, you might have come from them. There's a sense of them bringing out the silver lining for you as well. That might be partly why you're drawn to this personality that could be a bit dangerous, could be a bit temperamental, a bit red flaggy. I get the sense that if you've come from a background that isn't so great, or you've gone through some kind of trauma in any way, or grief, being around this person flips you out of that into feeling like you're in a film or something. And again, I'm not sure that's the healthiest reason to go after somebody, but it's coming up for me to communicate to you. So think on that. You know, do you want somebody who can manipulate people so easily because of the fact that they're sort of innocent in other ways and the fact that they bring you out of yourself? Is it a reasonable risk to take, or is it, in this case, something that actually is probably a bad idea? Only you can answer that question, but I'm going to give you some pointers along the way, kind of thing. So that's what you like about them. This isn't at the point where anything's mirrored, because it doesn't touch in the middle. This side is you, by the way, this side is them, in terms of your ideas of the other, so that the two ends kind of mirror each other. And where they meet, we have a reflection, okay? A true reflection, whereas just over here, we're in just your opinion of them. So let's shift over to the other side, to these three cards, and talk about their opinion of you in a way that isn't mirrored, right? Judgment reversed is an interesting one. I think perhaps, I mean, obviously they are a character who has an interesting relationship to convention. I don't think from the Hierophant coming up later, spoilers, that they are an unconventional, rebellious person, which is usually the energy of the Fool. I don't think they have that Aquarian, Uranian core, but I think that they like to come across like they do. And I think that they see in the middle of you a genuine lack of convention. I think there was something expected from your background, your culture, your career, something along the way, even if it's recently, but something major that you decided not to do. You kind of broke the pattern. For some of you, you're aware that you undid an ancestral legacy, or kind of healed a bit of ancestral curse work. If that's not immediately resonating and you don't know what I mean by that, it's not for you, because when I speak about curses on this channel, there's a very distinct meaning, and it doesn't mean that anything bad's going to happen to the querent. But for those of you who do root an ancestor work, or you work with deities from a particular ancestral pantheon, I think you know that you've broken a pattern somewhere there. And this person picks up on that and kind of likes it. They think it's kind of rad. They see that you are prepared to fly in the face of convention in a way that they would like to appear that they do. But ironically, in all of their kind of scheming of what different audiences would like to see of them, they're more conventional than you are. Does that make sense? It's almost like you outwardly lead the life that looks very not low-key, but comparatively low-key to this person, because they're quite extroverted. And yet the real rebel is not the spontaneous person doing all this crazy stuff. It's you who broke the pattern and stepped away and sort of said, no, I'm not doing that, fuck you all. But in a way that was much more polite, reserved, socially acceptable, etc. This person may have problems with social acceptability, and this is why they go to such great lengths to be someone who blends in different environments. For some of you, they do glamour and colour magic and things like that. Sort of not near future, but in the future, I will touch on that on this channel. So subscribe if you're interested, or indeed pass this on if you think they would be. But there's something about them having to wear a mask, and something about you being completely maskless, but you kind of don't care what anyone thinks, and that's why. And they really love this about you. They, like I say, they think it's really rad. The word rad is coming in a lot, so they might use that word. Okay, with the Four of Swords reversed, they see you as being very busy. They see you as having an active social life, but also as someone who knows when to rest, when to recuperate. It's like you have a very distinct sense of when to stay in, when to go out, when it is that you might sort of start feeling ill or tired or burnt out, and you're very preventative about those things. But then you're also, because you do conserve your energy in those ways, you're very able to be socially active or able to pursue your goals, particularly your intellectual goals. I think you might be a bit of a self-starter, a bit of an autodidact, and because they are very intelligent and sort of articulate, they appreciate that about you. But they see it as being almost more of a restful quality in you than it is in them, because your management of your own time and energy is a little better. I don't think that means that you've got a handle on things better overall than them. I think it just means that, again, they try to charm others, partly because they know that they have areas of weakness. And one of those areas is in knowing when to stop and have a rest, or knowing when to step back from a group and let things play out and just watch, right? And you're very good at that. I want to say you're very aware of others, but with the judgment reversed, you might not be so self-aware. And I think they find that cute. I don't think it's a negative thing. I think they see it as like, how can somebody be as good at stuff as I am, but without having done all the reading and conscious manipulation that I've been doing? This may be a person who devours books on social engineering, or kind of, the phrases I keep getting are like learning about schemes, about plans, ways of conducting yourself. And you don't do any of that. And you're not even really aware of your capacity to step away from convention in this fashion that they admire. But your lack of self-awareness in that area is adorable. They're sort of astonished by you, in a sense. And I think you're astonished by them, but in a different way. I think you see them as a little bit extra, a little bit larger than life, a little bit, as I said, unpredictable, in a way that amplifies your circumstances and sort of makes the world more vivid. But it's almost like they appreciate the opposite in you, that you can kind of turn down the sound. The song that's coming on is Come In Alone. So it's like you're happy being solo, you're happy being quiet, you're happy having 50-50 of, you know, sort of out there experiences that they'd enjoy, with just being in your own company and doing your own thing, and very much going your own way. They struggle with that a bit. They sort of need, I want to say they need other people to approve of them, but it's not that. It's that they need other people to react to them. I don't want to say that they have narc tendencies or anything like that. I want to be very explicit that I'm not saying that. But they may have been around somebody who did, because there is a need for supply here. There's a need for attention, regardless of whether it's positive or negative. and they will always be 10 steps ahead in how they get that. Whereas I think you naturally gain attention without looking for it or realizing it's going to come, right? And they sort of look to you and go, wow, how do you do that? But you're doing the same thing in their direction for what is a different set of operations, if you like, methods, right? They are very methodical compared to you. But I think you approach life's challenges at an equal bar. And then finally, with the King of Cups on this row, as well as knowing kind of when to go out, when to stay in, accidental Bowie reference, so that might be a thing as well. You know when to emotionally keep things to yourself, when to be the master over your emotions, and when to be expressive. And I think when you are expressive, you're very expressive. You may even have said words of emotion or words of love to this person that have got under all their layers of disguises and really touched them, and that they will never forget, right? Because the King of Cups balances himself on water. He's sort of on this floating raft, but he's not worried about where he's going. He's not bothered about being submerged. He has a mastery over the emotion that he's floating above, if you're familiar with that kind of water equals emotions tarot imagery, right? So there could be a stoicism to you that they appreciate because it's something they've tried to cultivate to social ends, with mixed results, I must say, in the past at least. I don't think they were always this fluent socially. But you have this quality naturally. You know when to speak, when to be silent. You know when to express something very raw and vulnerable versus when to express nothing at all. And perhaps, again, not deliberately, but perhaps mislead people by not expressing things. Perhaps even protect things by not always expressing everything at all times. Both of you share a heightened awareness of other people and a reaction to them that is very structured. But I think with them it's more calculated, and with you it comes more naturally. And they see you and think that's incredible, and you see them and can't predict them and think that that's incredible. So it's nice, I like it. But again, like, be careful that in thinking 10 steps ahead of everybody at all times, they're not also going to fall into the tendency of thinking 10 steps ahead of you and being disingenuous with you, because I think that's a genuine risk with this. I think it may be worth it sometimes because, as I say, they're very charismatic, but as we know from history, charismatic doesn't always mean fortuitous for other people. Okay, so moving on to the sort of mirror realm down here, we're also looking at what you like about each other, but these are different because these are qualities that are also reflected in each other. So whether or not you consciously acknowledge it, as I speak about what it is that you enjoy about them here, it's going to also be true of you. There's a wildness to both of you. There's a rebellion. There's a sense of abandon. I think in conjunction with the moon and the devil, it's potential sexual abandon. I think it could be extremely charged between you. And I think it could be deeply kinky as well. If you haven't crossed that barrier yet with them, just know that it's going to be as unpredictable as the rest of your relationship, but just as thrilling, right? It's going to be, and this isn't in the cards, but I think it's going to be healing for both of you as well. I sense that there might be some kind of bringing up of shadow elements within the sexual trust that you have, within the equal playing field of being able to be very open with each other, perhaps exploring a lot of things that most of your previous partners would not have explored or would not be open to. I think there's a strong theme of like telepathy through this, and you guys kind of knowing about each other without necessarily asking, which is interesting because of the fact that it's such a swordsy bit in places, and swords is usually direct communication, right? It's usually speech, so it's like you're talking, but you're also talking without talking. And this comes across especially in a bedroom, right? It's a kind of unwritten and very immediate understanding of what the other person wants at any time. I think they may make you feel wild and dark and sexy in a sort of dark feminine, dark masculine way, whichever you identify with. They bring out something delicious in you that is a bit dangerous as well. But again, because it's the mirror portion, you bring it out in them. And I don't think you realise. I think you see them as some kind of kinky virtuoso with all this experience without realising that you're doing the exact same shit to them that they're doing to you in any given moment, and that they can't predict you either, at least in that sense, right? I don't think you're as day-to-day unpredictable as they are, but I absolutely think that once you guys start taking each other's clothes off, or whatever it is that you do, they won't know what's coming next with you, and they will really, really, really enjoy that, like more than they have partners prior. The other thing, aside from the sexual interpretation of these two together, is that this person, you like their unpredictability, you also like that they're a temptation for you. It's like you feel the red flags coming. You knew that I was going to say in this reading that they're a bit dodgy, that there's some stuff to worry about, that perhaps you're not always completely safe with this person, but that they are incredibly exciting, electrifying because of those things. And again, I want you to examine what it is about your past and your personality that makes you so drawn to somebody who could feasibly hurt you, right? Who could be dangerous for your life, for your friendships, for your, in some cases, if it's BDSM, they could be physically dangerous to you or have the potential to be. But it's like you find it so enticing that you can't predict them, that it just ups the attraction tenfold. And I'm not saying that that's inherently negative. I've been in situations like that myself. I know how compelling it is. And I don't think that, well, it's very charged politically, so I'm not going to go into detail, but I don't think that always that BDSM is a dangerous thing by itself, if you resonate with that. But I do think that it can get into dangerous places. And I think that if there's a political disparity, a gender disparity between you, and therefore a difference in power, you need to be aware of why you're drawn to somebody who does these specific things to or with you, right? And what it is about yourself. And that's equally whether you're the dom or they're the dom or nobody's the dom, right? It still applies. I think it, in the same way that I said, examine why it is that you're drawn to a Machiavellian partner, I think also examine why you're drawn to a partner who is deeply unpredictable and perhaps dangerous. And I don't mean in the sense that they would ever knowingly harm you or sort of, I don't think that they would use their tendencies to cause calculated harm. I think instead that you both might get so carried away that this becomes quite toxic, right? Or it has the danger to be if you're not clued in at this point. And I think that's part of why you're viewing this reading, because this connection isn't as fraught as the previous piles. I don't think that you're here looking for answers to the same extent as the other groups, but I think you've almost been sent here so that I say, yeah, but just check this bit out though, yeah? Like, make sure that this is all happening for the good reasons, and that you're going to be positive influences on each other. Again, everything I've just said about them can apply to them about you, right? Because this is the mirror portion. So this is also you sort of seeing somebody who you know can be like that and recognizing the shadow in yourself that maybe wants, excuse me, channeling. I get hiccups whenever I do this. Maybe wants to come to the surface a little bit more. So to the extent that I maybe mildly concerned you with like, yeah, just keep an eye on them though. look to the aspect of yourself that they bring out in you and that you might want to keep an eye on and say, okay, where does that come from? What would I do with it in the worst case scenario? And, you know, turned kind of into the upright, if you like, or the shadow integrated, the shadow healed. What is it useful for in my day-to-day life in a positive way? Again, whenever you have a reading where someone's coming across as a bit sus, you're being asked to examine the aspects of yourself which can be sus or can be grey and can be integrated in a positive way for the benefit of others. And I think that you're ready now to hear this message and to look at those things in yourself and in your person. And when I say that they're not so trustworthy, perhaps that's something to like look at in terms of framing their relationship to other people and why you think that their positivity outweighs their negativity. And then looking at your own existence and your own life and saying, okay, of the qualities in them that I'm drawn to, which ones can I adopt for the greater good? Even if the methods aren't what anybody else would approve of, what can I do that would benefit others that is maybe part of this sneaky energy? With the Ten of Swords, another thing that they like about you is that you've taken a lot of shit. The Ten of Swords can fit into the sexual interpretation if you are in any way sub or masochist, because this is a person literally taking swords in the back. And from what I understand of the tarot, at this point they're still alive, right? So there's a degree of endurance in those capacities. I'm not going to go further than that on a non-18 plus reading, but they may appreciate that about you if you have been sexual with each other and that resonates. Again, I'm reading generally for a large group of people, so if you're completely turned off by some of the themes, just know that I'm reading for a big group and some stuff will apply to other people and some stuff will be better for you, right? But the non-sexual interpretation of the Ten of Swords is that perhaps you have been stabbed in the back, you've been betrayed, you've had a rough time, and you've come out of it just not really dwelling on that, right? You're okay, you're still standing. And they appreciate this about you. They really, really like it. I think this person has a resistance to being emotional with you that I think you'll have picked up on by now, right? It's a very intellectual connection. It's very sapiosexual. It's very sexual. But I'm not sure that it's very expressive to date. And this is, you know, the sort of first card that I've seen where they say what they like about you and it really speaks to your character rather than some of the more superficial stuff. That's not to say that the way that they relate to you is superficial, by the way. It's to say that their level of willingness to express themselves at this moment is in the areas they're comfortable with, namely intellect and sex, right? So you may not have seen the side of them that deeply admires you, or as we said before, is touched by something you said, but it's there. It's just that they're not very good at expressing that, really. It's part of their overall tendency to kind of want to police how people see them before they're seen, which is a shame. I feel kind of bad for this person that they have that in their core, but I also think that they're quite flamboyant in the way they conduct themselves, and they're not feeling a lack for having that particular weakness, shall we say. So yeah, they think you're very sexy, they think you're very wild, they think you take a lot, whether that's in a sexual or a general sense, and they see you as a temptation in the same way that you see them as a temptation. But I would say that if I'd just met you today and I asked you, what do you like best about your person, you would tell me they're very wild, they're very sexy, they're very tempting, and they endured a lot over time. Do you see what I mean with the mirror reading now, yeah? It's kind of the same when you're on this level. So let's hone in on, what they would say about what they like about you, which is over this way. So we've got Knight of Wands reversed, King of Wands upright, and Six of Swords reversed. I think they've seen a lot of growth in you, potentially recently. I think you might have gone from a bit of if not a fuckboy energy, any gender, then certainly an impulsiveness in the way that you relate to other people. And they've seen you outgrow that, graduate from that, and become, again, any gender, but the king archetype. They've seen you go from somebody who's a bit unreliable to becoming a leader. And if you haven't known them long, this is just something they get a sense of from what you've told them of their past. Again, with the judgment reverse journey of a lack of conventionality and the awareness of when to step forward, when to step back with the Four of Swords. It's sort of a reiteration of that from their end, but it's also like your overall vibe here is fire. So you're extremely sexy, very confident, or they see you as confident if you're not. Very sort of sure of yourself, possibly spiritual, possibly a good natural leader kind of figure, very keen on spiritual and intellectual exploration, possibly very keen on travel, these kind of fiery themes. This has always been true about you, but what they've seen more recently, or what they've heard from you more recently regarding your past, is that you've gone from the immature version of this energy into the mature mastery of it. You've gone to a point where you can take these qualities into a kind of leadership, and whether that be creatively, and some of you are in creative careers with all this wands, or whether it just be in a social setting, it's like you've reached the dynamic where you can lead other people, where you can show them how to be functionally spontaneous, how to be functionally adventurous, right? And how to integrate that in a healthy way with the rest of your life, which I do think they don't see in themselves. They don't feel that they can integrate their energies in quite as positive a fashion as you do. Having said that, as we're in the mirror row, they absolutely can. I think it's just that part of their admiration of you is a projection of qualities that lay dormant in them, or that they don't consciously recognise in themselves. Then with the Six of Swords in reverse, it's like, a Six of Swords is a journey out of something that no longer serves you. It can be a refugee energy, so you might resonate with literally travelling away from somewhere that didn't benefit you much earlier in your life, I get. It's not sort of recent, if it is that. But there's also a sense of like, once I've found where I belong, I'm not going to stop on that path. I'm not going to start packing my bags again and kind of run off. You're not a nomadic personality in the same sense that they are. And I don't mean in the way that you live in some of the reflections of pile 2. I mean more intellectually. You're not going to... You're not one to leap from one thing to the other, but you absolutely will give up if something's not serving you in the moment, right? Whereas they, I think, flip from thing to thing. The Fool energy is very... it makes me think of like when you're playing Sonic or something, and there's all the moving platforms, and there's something swinging at you in one of them, so you immediately jump to the other and you do a roll. But then you might be on a platform that's kind of near a bit of the game that you didn't want to be in, or near a greater danger, or something like that. You know, their movements are very erratic. As much as their relation to other people is quite calculated, I think the things that they do for themselves are a little bit oblivious sometimes. And they just kind of do things on a whim with that spontaneity. Whereas I think with you, you know generally what's good for you. You stick with it if it's going to be good for you long term, but you're also very adept at moving from one thing to another intellectually if it doesn't serve. You may be somebody who's had a few career changes and settled on something creative, and if that's the case, they really do admire you for that energy, particularly if it was... I'm hearing like entrepreneurial, or if it was sort of self-motivated. And, the sense I'm getting is like of somebody who hasn't really had much help and who's come from a place that they wanted to get away from either in career or in literal location, and has managed to just do it by themselves, set up and be fine. And kind of, they're looking at that with a bit of awe and a bit of, what can I learn from this person? Because they're always trying to calculate what it is that they can gain from every connection, right? In the nicest possible way, they look at their connections in terms of utility. And when they look at you, they see somebody who is incredibly useful, who has a lot of maybe wisdom to impart. That's not to detract from the fact that they are attracted to you and the fact that there's a strong sexual connection and possibly even a good friendship. But it is like an admiration for you that they think can turn into something grounded, practically useful, maybe even collaborative, right? So yeah, that's what they enjoy about you, but these are also things that they carry in a different way. I get the sense that their ascension from Knight of Wands to King of Wands was less in the way that I described with you, and more in the sense of they used to be a bit of a fuckboy, now they're not. They used to be not so great with people in the way that they related, and now they are a master of relationship and of communication in terms of their manipulative pursuits, right? Their glamour magic, if you will. And obviously that's a different vibe to what I just described with you. I also feel that if they have retreated from different circumstances in that Six of Swords way, it will be a very different story from yours. Again, with the echoes of pile 2, with you being possibly from different cultures, but there is a real sense with you of like being a refugee of something, even if it's only like a family or an idea. And with them, it's much more like they left something behind in terms of their own personality, and they morphed in a very calculated way into this charming, socially agile, charismatic person you see before you. Okay, so moving on, we're going to go down to what you dislike about them that isn't mirrored in you, right? So you don't have these qualities, there's no need to worry, but I'm just sort of confirming them for you and also bringing them up in case, as I say, you might want to reevaluate aspects of the relationship. So firstly, we have the Hierophant, which is really interesting with the cards we've had so far. On paper, the Devil, the Moon, the Fool, sometimes even the Five of Swords, all suggest somebody who's not particularly bothered what other people think, who's a bit of an extrovert, maybe looks very alternative for some of you. They might be very metal or very goth or something like that. But what's coming out in what you dislike about them that is true is convention, is rule following. It may be that in their attempt to be so fluent with other people, they actually have like a playbook that is really stagnating to sort of witness when you know what their next move is going to be with others, right? I don't have a sense that you know what it is with you, because like I say, you crave that unpredictability. But certainly with others, there is, what is it? It's like, I'm playing with the ring, and I'm bearing in mind who that it's from and my personal associations. For some of you, this person came from a strict religious background, and they carry forward some of the dogmatic ways of living that background nurtured in them, I guess. Whether or not they carry on the religion, I think they may, some of them will have left that whole thing behind and may even be anti-religion, but there's some stuff about it that they're doing now that rubs you up the wrong way. So take it as it resonates. Let me know in the comments if that's related to you and how, because I love having feedback on these kinds of readings. But yeah, there's something here that is specifically religious or to do with following moral rules or social rules to an extent that it is a little bit constricting. And again, that sort of flies in the face of what you like about them. So I'm not surprised that if you found out that this was kind of at their core, that they're more conventional than you thought, or that this wild, spontaneous, charming energy actually isn't based on somebody unpredictable in the middle, that might be very disappointing. You Without End is coming up, the Deaf Heaven song, and that's... I'm getting as well, because the Hierophant is about commitment and marriage and stuff like that. Maybe it's that this person has a much more conventional view of where they would want a relationship to go. Again, that's not going to resonate for everybody, but the other thing that I'm getting with this, with You Without End in combination with a marriage card, is perhaps this person is somebody who does believe in marriage, right? Which may be something you want. But if they do, it's like until something has completely convinced them, mind, body and soul, that they're worth it, they're not going to treat anybody like they would treat a future spouse. And that may include you, even if you're kind of right for them. Does that make any kind of sense? I'm hoping it does, so let me know down below. But yeah, it's this thing of like, yes, I believe in long term, but I believe in it so hard that I'm almost going to treat people like shit until I get there. Because I will know my person, I will recognise them, and I will know to suddenly be on best behaviour when they arrive, right? But the sad truth of that, and I know this from, watching Friends and from personal experience, it's kind of, if you behave like that for long enough, you lose the ability to detect who is right for you. And I sense for many of you that you are right for this person, and yet they've given you the treatment that they would give their standard interaction, particularly if it's a situationship type of deal. Not recognising you as hubby material or waifu material, but instead holding in their mind that there will be someone 100% perfect that will rock up at some point, and they will drop you and everybody else they've ever been attached to and suddenly become a different individual. I think that this manages to sustain in them because frankly they haven't done the work on themselves. And it may be something you're sort of background conscious of, which is why it's coming up in this reading, but it wants me to say it out loud. It wants me to say that, again, they could have a religious conventionality, they could have a background of wanting people to approve of them that speaks to this and why they are constantly researching people, constantly scheming about what to do next, how to get the biggest reaction. And both of those are forms of convention. But like I say, the third meaning is that they do believe in commitment, but they won't behave well until they're 1000% sure that the person they're going to commit to is stood right in front of them, and that this person has zero issues, because I don't think your person sees their own issues, right? Yeah, I think it's a little bit complex, but I hope I'm getting the point across. I don't think they actively try to treat people like shit, by the way. I think that it would hurt them to know that they'd hurt someone else. But I do think there's a level of seriousness that they think they will get round to one day. That's it. Yeah. It's that they're always putting, I will step up to this, into the future. And you're ready to step up here and now. You're ready to be all right with this here and now and just see what comes of it. And I don't think they're on the same page. Again, I don't think it's because of the relationship with you specifically. I think it's because of where they're at in terms of their maturity. Moving on to the Four of Pentacles here. I'm going to say it again, it's the Magic Penny song. The amount of times this card has come up on this channel and we've ended up singing the Magic Penny song together or looking up the lyrics or whatever it is. This person can be a miser, but I'm getting specifically with this combo that it's an emotional miserliness. It's not the financial Scrooge. It's that they are very self-preserving, as stated earlier, with what they give away. It might be why they admire your stoicism, because they sense that it comes from a better place than their restriction of emotion. I think when they hold back, it's because of some fears and some negative patterns, which we will address in a moment. I think when you hold back, it's because that is part of your nature now, and it helps to you know, lubricate you socially, shall we say. It helps to prevent people from sabotaging things that you're working on if they get jealous or if they're not great people or whatever. That's not true of this person. I think when they emotionally hold back, it's because they are emotionally holding back. Excuse me again with the hiccups. I'm getting a bit refluxy. I feel like this person's heart chakra is really blocked. And it's coming from, it like, gross analogy, and I'm really sorry guys, but if you get reflux, you get acid from your stomach or from your solar plexus going up to like your heart and lung area, your heart chakra, right? So it's this like, there's a bit of bile in the way that they see themselves in the solar plexus up into the way that they perceive love in the heart, right? There's a bit of damage in the way that they self-perceive that is preventing them from being able to be open with other people. And I would even hazard a guess that is the reason why actually they're held back. It's not, oh, one day I'll respect my perfect hubby or waifu, and you know, they deserve for me to not be bothered about other people in the meantime. Because that's not a truth. You know, everybody's had relationships in the past, whether they be serious or not, right? Even if you're a virgin until marriage and you get married in school and then you die with the person, you will have had social interactions before that point. I think your person is kidding themselves that they're kind of saving themselves, when actually what it is that they won't open up. So love is like a magic penny. Hold it tight and you won't have any. Lend it, spend it, and you'll have so many they roll all over the floor. If this person, and I say this with some caution because of the themes we've come across, but if this person is a bit sexually dysfunctional or a bit kinky to the sense that their fetishes are perhaps not so socially acceptable, or that some of the stuff that they're doing is a little bit, dare I say, misogynist or misandrist or racist or anything like that, I think it's because this person has perceived a lack of love, right? The relationships that they've been in have been very hold it tight and you won't have any, right? There has been no love given, no love received, and therefore their idea of love is very much in parentheses with sex all around it. So I think that they connect easier in a sexual sense than they do in an emotional sense. And I think, as again, it's another red flag bit. So I'm going to say, I think you need to examine your relationship to that and whether this really dumb, quite frankly, very dangerous 50 Shades stereotype bullshit about saving someone or being the person to heal a very damaged person, or to stop them from being violent, or to stop them from being emotionally abusive, or whatever it is. Whether that's an archetype that you're drawn to. You may even be a fan of things like 50 Shades or, you know, romance stories or movies where somebody comes in and heals a very damaged person, you know, anywhere running the gamut from like Leaving Las Vegas to Beauty and the Beast to, I don't know, modern examples where someone's a dick and someone else comes in and says, hey, you just need an extra bit of love. And then they stop being a dick, right? And I don't necessarily believe that life plays out that way. I think that there are reasons that we're drawn to people with not so great behaviour. I absolutely believe that this person can heal. And I think that you're right on the money if you think that they're not expressing their love because of some past damage and that can be healed. I just don't know that coming in like their white knight on a charger is going to be the thing that benefits either of you, to be honest. Because I think they're not willing to treat you like a saviour because of the reservations that they have about committing to anybody. And you're not going to receive from them the adequate baseline treatment that anyone should receive because they are so damaged that they can't give you emotionality and love. And you are a very loving person, or we wouldn't have the King of Cups. Moving on to the Queen of Wands, I think this person, in their sort of flattening of love aspects into sexuality, I think they might be quite popular. It's a nice way of describing the Queen of Wands in this context. It's not a bad card. There are no bad cards, but it's a card that can be somebody who is very aware of their own sexual effect on people and flaunts that effect. And I think that this is something that makes you deeply uncomfortable because of your level of interest in them. This may be somebody who posts thirst pics, who has a lot of sneaky links or extra connections that you're not sure where they met these people, who are constantly approving of everything that they do. And again, approval isn't bad, having a lot of friends isn't bad, even having some connections that happen sort of more in private isn't bad. But in combination with someone who's quite overtly sexual, who's very socially adept and who can be very manipulative, I think you can see why it's a worrying quality, right? And it's something that niggles you. I think you've possibly been concerned over it in the past. And again, this will, because there's a wide audience, this can be concerned in the sense of, gee, I didn't know they had that many friends of the sex they're interested in, all the way to, oh yeah, I know they've cheated on everyone they've ever been with, and I know that they're currently with like 3 people or 4 people or whatever who don't know that they're being polygamous, right? There is a broad spectrum of this kind of behaviour. You know where you lie on it already. I'm not breaking any news to you if you're hearing this. So if that end of the spectrum that I just described doesn't resonate, then that bit's not for you. It's just that they might be a bit sort of flaunty online, shall we say. And it is online because we've got the world and it sort of links in, right? So I'm getting that this is somebody potentially with a decent social media following and not always for the best reasons, right? Or somebody who will, as I said at the beginning, court attention, whether that attention is positive or negative. And that is something that you find to be a bit repugnant, I want to say. It really puts you off, maybe even sexually. And I certainly identify with that experience where somebody can put it out there so much that you think, well, I don't want to be one of many, you know? Not in a slut-shamey way, because everybody's allowed to have as many partners as they like, but more in the sense that nobody wants to be involved with, what's the term? Community dick, right? And it doesn't have to be that they have a penis, but community dick is the phrase that I'm thinking of, right? They seem very like they are happy to be sort of passed around on a very empty level with a lot of people, or they're happy in the same way that they sort of flit from event to event. They're very happy to go from person to person in a way that is not necessarily attentive to any of those people's genuine needs or perceptions of what's going on, and that might therefore be quite hurtful and sometimes quite intentionally two-timey, manipulative. This person might be very good at giving answers that omit a lot of detail but don't directly lie, right? We've all had that experience, or many of us have anyway, I should say, where somebody says, oh, I'm busy this weekend, sorry, maybe another time, definitely want to meet up. And then the reason that they're busy is actually that person that's been active on their page for quite a while, or it might be something that they were doing that they shouldn't have been doing, or a project that they're working on that they told you they'd stopped working on, or whatever it is, right? But I get for you it is probably a particularly sexual attention, just because of how this person's coming across in what you like. It's almost like you're drawn in the same way that everybody else is drawn in, but then you see the other people around you salivating and you think, I don't want to be just one of these people. I want something that is fitting for me, that I want them to step to the level that I deserve and give me an equal amount of attention to what I'm giving to them, right? Or at least an elevated proportion of attention from their 10,000 other connections or potential connections. Because again, it's not necessarily that this person is sleeping with lots of people. It's just that they're not denying that that's a possibility with those people, and I feel that those people are potentially getting a bit hopeful about it. If this is all resonating, by the way, one of my Marseille minis covered a very similar situation where somebody was neither confirming nor denying their single status for effect. and someone else, the querent, was getting very frustrated with them. So you might be drawn to my A to Z Lucky Dip series, in which case you may well find out that reading. But I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember which letter it was. So I'll comment if I do remember, but yeah, it may be just that that's for you. But if it doesn't resonate, it's obviously not. What they dislike about you that is not a mirror. Okay. I don't feel that you're the most financially stable with this King of Pentacles, or I think that they think you're not. So whether it's that in moving from career to career and doing this entrepreneurial stuff, you were very successful in terms of building your reputation, but perhaps not as successful in maintaining some stability. That's one possibility. The other thing with King of Pentacles is just stability in a non-financial sense, right? They may not see you as a steady character, which, ironic, right? But again, on this side, we're just getting their perceptions. It's not truth, so take it as it resonates and take it as you think that they might say these things or not, right? Yeah, King is like, it's weird that you've got a King in what they like about you twice, and then you've also got a King in reverse in what they dislike. It's like, so they can admit that you're emotionally very adept and very sort of stoic, and they can admit that you've leveled up in your wands territory, but then when it comes to overall security, they think that you're lacking. I find that to be a bit, I don't know, I don't want to get arsey at your person, but it's a bit rich, right? And rich is an interesting word because King of Pentacles in the upright would be someone wealthy, right? So the other option of this, actually, if your Six of Swords thing resonated as you perhaps coming from a background that you're not so proud of, or a place that was not beneficial for you environmentally, whether that's, you know, just that you're in a family that you consider a bit eye-rolly, all the way to you're a refugee from a war-torn country. Like, anything on that spectrum is possible, again, because general reading. But I sense that, like, in your sort of flight from that situation, they think that you haven't quite reached a life of luxury yet, or a life of stability, because of the limitations that were on you from in where you originally came from, if that makes sense. So say you, for example, came from a very working class background, and you've made great efforts to sort of transcend the financial barriers that often come with that and get yourself out of being on the breadline. They may see that because it was such a difficult journey for you, even though you'd make a great leader, and even though you have leveled up, you might still not be in a financial position that is on a par with everyone else, right? You might still be paying for the lack of privileges that you had earlier in life. Or, yeah, I want to say earlier, because it's not necessarily childhood, it's just earlier than now, right? So they're kind of, I think it's kind of a bitchy thing to judge about you anyway as well, because it's almost like, this will be triggering for some of you, so little warning. Excuse me again with the hiccups, but it's almost like with this focus on social media, on sexuality, on eventually having hubby or waifu energy, it's like with this King of Pentacles, they're saying they can't show you off, or like they're not ready to show you off in the way that, you know, perhaps they've had very empty connections in the past that have been largely sexual and have been good arm candy in whatever way, you know. They've appeared to be very stable. They've appeared to be very wealthy. They've appeared to be physically attractive in a more conventionally acceptable form than you are. And I'm not saying they're not attracted to you, by the way, because they are absolutely 10 times hornier for you than they've ever been for anyone else. But it's more that they're like, yeah, but are they an insta-baddie though? Because that's what's fashionable right now. So they may have been with an insta-baddie, even though they weren't as attracted to them, because it's like, well, this is easier to show off and it fits with my overall persona, you know, the mask I'm wearing for everyone. It's quite rude. I think this person can be quite rude, even though they're very good with words. I think some of their character has a rudeness that is difficult to conceal when you know them really well. But whichever way it resonates, whether it's that they don't want to show you off just at the moment, or whether it's that you came from a background that has left you sort of not quite in the level of stability that they would like, just take it as it resonates and realize that I'm not saying that these are truths about you. Spirit is not saying that these are truths about you. If anything, I'm getting a vibe that you've done incredibly well to be where you are and that you're absolutely bossing it. But this is how this person thinks, unfortunately, because they are so self-conscious, status-conscious, attention-seeking, etc. And again, I'm not saying they're bad either, but I just want you to understand that this isn't a dig, this isn't a neg, this is like me saying their priorities are out of whack, but these are what their priorities are temporarily, yeah? Then moving on the same row of what they dislike about you to the Five of Wands in reverse. This taps back into what I said earlier about supply and attention. It sounds counterintuitive, but they resent that you're conflict avoidant because they don't get the reactivity from you that they may have gotten in the past. So, for example, with the previous thing of they dated somebody for status, that may have gone on while you were in connection with them in some fashion. They may have even like ghosted you for a little bit to do that and get it out of the system and then come back, right? And it's only an example, but in that sort of thing, I think what this person wanted was for you to make a big fuss because everybody else clouding around them going, ooh, isn't this person charming? Isn't this person incredible? Aren't they intellectually impressive, etc.? Everyone else would have a strop about this, would have a tantrum. And instead you are in that very good King of Cups energy where even if you feel resentment about something or you feel hurt or heartbroken, you're not likely to give a reaction that is going to be detrimental to your reputation, hurtful of other people, etc., etc. You're not very reactive. And they wish that you were more reactive because they're coming from this very unhealthy idea of love. Again, it might be related to their past, where if somebody cares, they demonstrably tantrum about stuff, or they beg somebody to come back, or they step immediately into whatever this person defines as marital energy, or whatever it is. But they wanted a bigger reaction from you for something they've done. If this is quite a new thing, this could be a relatively minor thing. They could have said something in conversation that they knew was a neg, or that they knew was something that would politically rub you up the wrong way, or something like that, just to see, just to test the waters of how important do you think I am? How much will you go off? How feisty are you, right? How fiery is your personality? And to whatever extent that they did that, they didn't get the response that they were wanting. But I also want to say, and this is separate to their interpretation of events, well done you, right? It's really difficult sometimes when you know somebody's trying to sort of trigger you or one-up you or aggravate you in some way for a reaction. And rather than responding to that, you've done very well in sort of going, whoa there, and then giving them a very, I want to say like a very diplomatic answer or a very diplomatic set of behaviours, which pisses them off because they'd like the supply and they'd like the attention, but it's actually the better thing to do morally. So well done you. Finally, in what they don't like about you that isn't mirrored, we have the Two of Cups. What an interesting one, right? Those of you who've come for love readings before ever will know that the Two of Cups is a strong friendship energy, strong soulmate connection, possible twin flame connection. It's the sort of Gemini counterpart kind of thing with the number. It's very like they see you reflected in them and vice versa. Interesting that you came for a mirror reading in that sense. But what I get with this, at the root of it, is that they're pissed off that you might be it and they've behaved badly already. They've given themselves away. Particularly for somebody who does exert such a force of control over their immediate interactions, even if in other ways they're very uncontrolled. I think it's quite, I think they found it quite not socially. I think they found it mentally debilitating that they swanned into this. And swan is an interesting animal because that's about pairing off as well. But anyway, they've entered into this with the same casual, laid back, I can charm anyone, I know you before I meet you, I've got this art of seduction type energy. And they've met somebody who it turns out might be right for them. And then they're going, oh fuck, because a part of them knows they're not ready for that, right? A part of them can't step to it now because they've already behaved like their current selves in front of you. I think this person's idea of themselves in the future, in a committed way, is very lofty, very moral, very compassionate, considerate of the other person, has an excellent reputation, has left any dodgy behaviour in the past. So for them to meet this person now, while they're still doing all this shit, it's like, oh God, have I fucked up, right? They're mad that they see you as a counterpart, is the root of it. Which I guess is like a good thing for you, because of these three things, two of them aren't even insulting. Like what, you're pissed at me because I don't get mad when you get, you know, demonstratively tantrumy, and you're pissed at me because you like me so much. Like, big whoop, you know? So I think in terms of what they dislike about you, there's not a whole lot to worry about, except for this person's level of maturity and level of growth, and whether you want to be engaging with it, pal 3. Speaking of engagements, etc., let's get to what you dislike about them that is also mirrored in you. So we talked about this Hierophant, and by the way, that doesn't mean that marriage is for everyone. They may not want marriage, but I'm talking about their idea of long-term commitment, right? There's a bit of an echo in this. Let's think about how I say this. What you dislike about them is that you see them as uncooperative. The reason that you encountered them is that you needed to see uncooperative energy in yourself. Yeah? And on that, my body's not cooperating. I'm just going to take a quick break and head to the bathroom and then come back again. Hello again, pal 3. Right. Part of that was to do with expulsion energy. I know that's, you know, not a great way to put that, but I needed a quick bathroom break, and that's about getting rid of things, right? It's your kidneys, clearing out your system, etc. There's something with this uncooperative stuff about getting rid of people in your person's case. I think that what you dislike about them is that rather than work with others when all of this kind of scheming doesn't necessarily pan out, and I think most of the time it does, if I'm honest, but in the few circumstances where people don't play back the way that this person wants them to, I think they will just drop them. I think they'll sort of cut off connections. And I don't begrudge anybody doing that if a connection is toxic, but I think this person does it, this cutting off thing with a frequency that worries you. Because I think in part, you're aware of some of their reservations, some of their hesitancy, certainly some of their wild, unpredictable behaviour. And you're a little bit scared that the next person to get completely cut off will be you. Which I think is a founded fear. I think it's justified. Canary Yellow is the song playing at the moment, and there's a bit of a sense of the canary in the coal mine with these red flags, right? You've had some indication that all is not well, and this reading is asking you what you're going to do with that. I'm not saying that they will cut you off, but I'm saying that if you're getting this many hunches about different ways that they're not great for you at the moment, it might be worth evaluating how much trust you place in the future of this relationship, or indeed what it is that you would require from them to absolve them of these kind of things that they've done, or these tendencies, or what they would need to do for you to trust them again if they came back towards you, right? I think it's important to have a list of like green flags for somebody anyway, to be honest. But I think particularly in your case, when there are so many red ones, it would be a good idea to think about, okay, if this person gets in touch and they say they do want something more, or if they don't, to be honest, but they just want to meet up and hook up, and I might be at emotional risk because of it, then what do I need them to say, do, or behave like in order for me to feel safe and in order for me to feel like they're cooperating? And the other thing to say about this is that, you know, they're bringing up where your lack of cooperation with others is. And I sense for you that is in other areas of your life. I don't think it's in relationships, but there might be something at work or with family or something like that at the moment where you're not playing well with others, and part of your instinct on it is just to can it and just to call it a day with whatever that is. And this is telling you that that would sort of, it would mirror your person if you did that. And therefore to think of it from the perspective of you viewing your person, right? Whether or not you do need to remove yourself, and I would encourage you to, if ever a situation outside of this one is, you know, abusive or anything like that. But I think there's something here that's being, you're getting a nudge that you're giving up too easy on something, is what I want to say. And that's why this is coming up in what you dislike about them, but in the mirrored portion where like, no, this is also true of you, dude. So the next thing is that they rush into stuff, particularly with their words. They may be overtly flirtatious with other people, or it might just be that sometimes, even though they think they have control of the situation, they say a little too much, or they're, the way that they operate gives me like the game vibes and sort of, oh, what's it called? That shit that incels do to manipulate women. Okay. That's not a very politically correct way of expressing it, but it makes me think of that whole sphere of kind of playing games with people in a social engineering way, but specifically with a sexual objective in mind. And again, not gendering who this is or who you are or anything like that, but there may be a sense that because they have these schemes set up in a very strategic, you know, rudimentary fashion, as we covered with the Hierophant, sort of doing things in an order by the book, sometimes they feel so confident in their methods and in that structure that they end up just getting over cocky, overconfident and saying too much. And then they kind of give themselves away. And I think perhaps, again, you've witnessed this. Like, there's a theme through this reading of you've seen them at their most vulnerable. You've seen them with the mask on, the mask off, in different settings, whether they've been on top of their game or not so much. And, you know, what you dislike about them is that when they're bad, they're very, very bad, especially with the words. Again, this is something that's reflecting to your side. I don't think it's nearly as bad with you, and I certainly don't think it's in the sexual arena. But I would say be careful of where you communicate too much at once in the moment where you're feeling particularly angry with someone, because this Knight of Swords looks angry to me. So be careful of saying too much, maybe in this situation with this lack of cooperation, or be careful of just being too verbose. I know the irony of me saying that, having recorded God knows how long of a reading, but there's a thing here about too many words or words that are too hasty, okay? The third thing that you dislike about them, it speaks to this Queen of Wands, it's the internet presence, right? And it might go beyond the Queen of Wands stuff we talked about into, you know, you don't like their business page or the way they're branding other stuff, or you don't like that they troll certain porn sites, or you don't like that they, you know, have this sneaky extra profile for this thing. Whatever it is, I think it also emphasises this and emphasises that the way that they get attention predominantly begins online, whether or not they then go to parties and stuff and do it all in person. This may even be as well something like FetLife, like maybe the sexual connections that they get are all hooked in via some kind of online means. So I'm seeing someone on a phone and then hiding the phone, right? But there's something about that with this. Now, with the world reflecting over to your side, I think there's a slightly different meaning for you. I think, yes, this is something you see in them as related to that. But with you, it's a call to look at how you feel about your own internet presence. Perhaps it's not doing the same things as this person, but perhaps in other ways, there are things about the way that you're behaving online that are inconsistent with your values or what you want from other people. And the thing that I said about maybe like dating apps or sex apps or whatever makes me think, are you wanting commitment with this person, but then putting yourself out there on places like Tinder, rather than places where you know you would get a relationship, or rather than just deleting the apps altogether and concentrating on this person if you decide that they're for you? So there's very much like a misalignment going on. And again, I want to say that from your end, these things are not extreme, but you're in part thinking them about your person because they reflect issues or areas that you need to work on in order for the connection to move forward from both sides, right? Okay, so going on to what they dislike about you that they sort of don't realise is a mirror of them. Here's the big news. They love you. If you're new to tarot, you didn't see that coming. You may have seen it at the beginning of the reading, and I kind of didn't want to say it till now because I thought it might downplay some of the stuff that I needed to say about red flags. But they absolutely do love you. And I mean love with like a big L. I don't mean they feel for you slightly or they're interested. Even if this is new, this is love for them. Or it's love sort of beyond the extent to which they've ever experienced that. So if you did just meet someone in a club and for some reason you're coming to a twin flame reading straight afterwards, trust me when I say nobody has had quite the impact on them so far that you have. They dislike this for the same reason that they didn't want the Two of Cups. They didn't want you to be their counterpart because they're not ready to deal with their inner Hierophant. They also don't want to be in love with you. They just don't want it, right? They love for them carries all these sort of Four of Pentacles iffiness meanings of this person will close off from me, this person will betray me, love never results in good things. You know, they don't have the lend it, spend it, and you'll end up having more. They have the, if you keep it to yourself, it's always safe, right? So they don't want to feel this way about a person because it's becoming increasingly difficult for them not to express how they feel to you. And yet expression, true expression, not just intellectual cleverness, but genuine emotion, is something that's really out of their comfort zone. They don't know how to go about this. There's no instruction manual for it as well. You know, if they are into all the social engineering stuff, you don't get instruction from players online on how to tell somebody you love them. You get instruction on how to, like, you know, fuck them over, bang them for a night, maybe borderline rape them if you're in with the really dodgy ends of that particular online crowd, right? But you certainly don't get any kind of wisdom if you end up liking one of these people, wanting to take it further, on what the fuck you do, how you take the mask off that got them back to their place in the first place, you know. And I know that you see their masks because I'm seeing it in what you like about them, but they don't think that you've sussed them out at all, and they're terrified that if they're open with you, you will, and that you'll hate them for the amount of falseness that they incorporate into their everyday existence. Now, with this being a mirror card, I don't think that you, if you do love them, and many of you do, I don't think that you dislike that you love them. I think this is here to say, as I got with the reflux stuff earlier, that there is a block to love at your end. There is a bit of resistance to love. Perhaps it's just that with this particular person, you don't know what love would look like, right? Because you've been in a very different paradigm with them. You've been comfortably very sexual. You've been perhaps openly, low-key abusive to each other in a way that's like mutually consenting. And yet you have to leap from whatever that was to love. And as much as you're frustrated with them sort of not making more of a move or not being as expressive, I think you're also resistant to this happening because you kind of can't imagine what it would look like if it did. Moving on to the Page of Wands in reverse, just over here. Sorry if I knocked the camera just there, reaching through. There's like there's a passivity to this. The Page of Wands in the upright is a very forthright, you know, very interested character who's willing to say whatever, even if they're not that experienced. So when it's flipped, it's like somebody who is nervous about fully expressing themselves, which again, like, hello, mirror reading, right? But it's also kind of, again, I think they're projecting to an extent, because this is the mirror portion, but there's a sense of like petulance and immaturity. To the extent that this person is emotionally immature, I think that they frame you as lifestyle immature. This frame, it goes back to King of Pentacles, which is weird because they like you. They just said that you're a great leader and you've come a long way, right? But there is some way in which they're going, oh no, I scratch all that. We're going back to the page, which is even before the knight, right? So it's like on the one hand, they're telling you you've leveled up from a knight to a king. On the other hand, they're saying, oh no, they've devolved back into a page. And I think this is in the mirror portion because this is their projection of their immaturity onto you. I don't think it's really true of you. I think it could be true that you're not as expressive as you could be. I think that's right. And that's why it's down here as well. But I think in terms of them saying, oh, so-and-so's such a child, it's what they tell themselves to justify the fact that they can't be childlike with you. They can't be open. They may even have called you naive at some point because naivety is almost alien to them because everything they do is calculated. And again, I want to say that I do feel sorry for your person because it must be incredibly debilitating to be trapped in a position of fear where you feel you have to manipulate others, right? Let's finish on the Empress, shall we? Again, finishing the triad of I don't like how much I like you. The Empress is an energy of sensuality, sexuality, pleasure, abundance, mastery, motherhood for some, nurturing, being able to kind of come up out of the underworld and start spring everywhere. It's just the highest compliment you can receive when it's in this particular position. They don't like that you're pretty much everything to them. And particularly if you're dealing with a masculine, they don't like that you are the sacred feminine already and that they have a lot of work to do. They are not leveled up anywhere in these cards, even to like a king that would be close to an empress, never mind an emperor. I know that we've got the Hierophant, but that's not a suitable counterpart, right? This is more of a priest figure. It's sort of, yeah, there's just no, it's like counterpart energy on your side, but then they realise that they're not up to that, and that makes them feel like shit, so they hate it about you. Basically, most of what this person is saying about you negatively, or thinking about you negatively, should I say, because I don't feel they're a gossip, is that they dislike how much of a compelling effect you've had on them. And I don't think that they would yet call that compelling effect love, but it absolutely is. And they don't know what the fuck to do with it. But we're going to get to the advice. We're going to get to some additional oracles. Obviously, if you wanted the message card stuff as well, you can book with me privately and get a bit more of a detailed, specific reading. But the thing to say before we go into oracles for this is that because this Ace of Cups is here and they don't like that they love you, and this is the strongest energy of love you can get in the tarot, really, I think they're going to say something. So your next advice is like, listen up, really, you know? And this is partly why you've been called to investigate the red flags and to evaluate before they feel that they can come to you, whether or not you're actually going to tell them, I'm really sorry, but I think we're just too different, or I think that you step over some boundaries that I don't want people to step over, or I have higher standards than this, or whatever it may be. You may well want to be with them, and that's fine, and I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other by pointing out what's potentially not so great about this person. I want to stress that, because we've all sort of had crushes, at least, that have been not so grand, right? But I do think that you're being prepped for them to come forward. And prepped in this case is not, hey, get ready, get fancy free and free for anything fancy, it's going to be amazing. Prepped is, are you ready to accept their love even if they're still broken? Is this something that your predominant experience of is positive? Or is your predominant experience, if we're being real, negative but just very compelling? Okay, so we're going to look at some archetypes. Just one moment. So we'll get your archetype at the moment, their archetype at the moment, and the energy that's currently existing between you. And then we're going to get one astro card for advice as well. These are shuffling a little bit stickier than they have done in previous piles. I think this person doesn't want you to know. That's you, so that's good. You're in the light aspect of the lover, so great passion and devotion, unbridled appreciation of someone or something. This is my confirmation that if you did want to accept them, you're in a prime position to do so. You've received the information in this reading that you need to make sure that you keep yourself safe, but you also are a person who's come from backgrounds that you've transcended. Excuse me. You're somebody who, with that little cough, is very good with the throat chakra, with communication. You have a much more open heart than this person, even if you need to do a little work on that. And you are very sexually compatible with them, very intellectually compatible and on their level. I think you would be a good lover for them. I just wonder whether you would just be a lover and not a partner, right? So for their energy, we've got the eternal child. This reading is throwing some major shade. I do apologise if you're finding any of it offensive. I'm not laughing at it, I'm laughing with it, because I think Spirit is just like saying absolutely to what we've been saying. It is in the light, but I think it's really obvious with eternal child and all the things we've talked about that there may still be an issue about this person growing up a bit, right? So the light attributes are determination to remain young in body, mind and spirit, and ability to see things with fresh eyes. So the upshot of this Hierophant, I'll do all of that growing up later, is that they do have a kind of childlike wonder and magic, which is really useful in a connection, really beautiful. Useful was a strange word, I'm not going to use that. It's a very enriching thing to experience as the counterpart to somebody who is childlike in the best sense, right? And at the beginning we spoke about you being drawn to them because of their spontaneity and their perhaps impulsivity, but in a positive sense. Their ability to just step along through the synchronicities of life, find their way, be fine, and do stuff that nobody expects. And I think this is your reminder of that, right? We're going full circle. We're saying, yes, they're still a kid. There might even be an age gap in some cases, but also they are still a kid, right? And that might be something that you need. It's certainly something you honed in on straight away when Spirit was describing to me why it is that you're drawn to this person. And then the sort of companion energy is advocate in the light, which inspires you to put compassion into action. So again, there's this sense of like being kind to this person, regardless of whether they've been kind to you, which again would resonate with pile 2 as well. But there's also advocating for each other, right? Yes, there are all these red flags, but can I stick up for this person against this tarot reader I don't know, and say that the red flags are maybe worth it? And if not that, then can I exercise self-compassion to the extent that when this person rocks up and says, I love you, you say, I know, and I love you too, but it's not likely to work because I care about myself too much to keep doing this, right? There is a sense that you will, even if they come to you with a love confession, I think you will go round and round with this a little bit longer until they've figured out what it is that they want and until they've realised that they have to work to get to it. So advocate for yourself, also advocate for them, and they will advocate for you is the message I'm getting. Very easy shuffle. We've got the top one on this. Yod, destiny. Interesting now. So for those for whom I mentioned magicians, there is a tree of life on here, which obviously corresponds to ceremonial magic, Judeo-Christian magical traditions, Eurocentric magic in general, right? It's very oft used. So that might be a visual clue that we were on the money there. But with it being destiny, right? I can't tell you whether this is your person or whether this is a connection that was here to teach you something. We won't use the K word because it's massively culturally appropriative as well as a misunderstanding of the term. But you know what I mean. If you come for these readings a lot, you know what I mean by that. But yeah, whether or not this person was travelling through to teach you that you are drawn to certain types of people and that some of the reasons for that are good and some of the reasons for that are not so great. And to bring up those issues in you so that you could resolve them in yourself. Or whether you end up in your version of the white picket fence, whatever that is for you guys, is up to you. But either way, there is a definite sense of destiny with this, right? This was meant to happen, you were meant to meet. It may even be why there is such a strong sacral chakra pull, a sexual pull between you. Because it was like pulling you towards something more than sex, towards a developmental stage, towards a love connection, whatever it may be. So I think part of this is like, be thankful for it, because even if you decide that you don't want to be with this person or that the experience has been kind of dog shit, this is something that was here to transform you as a person and to bring out in you the best qualities of this person that you've been attached to, and also to teach you how to avoid some of the negative stuff that you've experienced or are experiencing. And obviously the flip side of that is, if you're meant to be together, if it is destiny, you absolutely will be together. You will make it work, right? And this is something also to consider when they've come towards you and you've got past the sexual bit, and then you're kind of doing the bit where you chat about what's next. Like, there is a real sense that if it's destined for you, you will mutually agree at that point to work on it. Whether or not either of you fuck up along the way, there will be a sense for both of you that it is correct. And if that's not present, then I'm afraid that for the moment it is not destiny. And that the destined thing instead was to examine relationships in general in your life, to look into the mirror, right? To look into the mirrored reading and see what it had to teach you. So I hope it did have anything to impart or anything useful or any resonances. Please let me know down in the comments what was useful, what wasn't. Any kind of weird stuff that came up that you didn't think that I'd tap into. I love to hear feedback like that. If you did enjoy it, please like, hit subscribe, ding the dong, thank you kindly. Or look elsewhere on my channel for any of the lucky dip type readings. We've got an A to Z of alphabetized words in different envelopes where you can pick words and add them to the upcoming envelopes. That might be for you. We've also got a spectrum series going where I'm traveling kind of through the rainbow with randomized readings that are based on subjects to do with each color and transmissions to do with coloured light, right? So that might be your jam. There's also some other stuff like the Your Future Spouse, What You'll Fucking Hate About Them reading. If you do feel destined for this person, maybe that will resonate. I'm also going to be doing a boundary setter, try before you buy, a smaller version of my choice maker, all kinds of exciting stuff so that you can get a taste for what's in my shop. But if you do want to book with me privately, obviously it's going to be a more precise reading if I deal with just your energy than it is doing a general reading like this that is for, you know, between 10 and thousands of people. So do consider that if you resonate with me and you like my vibe. Or there's a donation button down below. I would really appreciate a quid, a fiver, whatever, towards this cost of energy crisis winter, because this is my main income. But if you don't have the funds for that, or you're just not inclined, then thank you for being here anyway, Pal 3. I really do hope that it works out for you in whichever direction you intend to take it. And I hope that at some point this person can kind of come out of their shell and give you the treatment that you deserve. And if not, that you can give you the treatment that you deserve, right? So take care, and I'll hopefully see you soon.